The Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Honorable FCPA John Bandi, EGH, you may now proceed with your afternoon job.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the 13th Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it is my honor and privilege to present to this august House and to the people of Kenya the budget statement for the financial year 2026-2027. I make this statement in fulfillment of the requirements of Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, this is the first budget since the passing of the late Right Honorable His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, who is fondly remembered as a patriot and national hero, and who steadfastly championed economic justice, democracy, and equal opportunity for all Kenyans. His legacy continues to inspire and guide us as we transform Kenya into a newly industrialized and middle-income economy. In honor of his immense contribution to our country, I would politely request and invite members of this esteemed House to observe a moment of silence, which will take 1 minute.
Members be upstanding. Guests in the galleries be upstanding.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga was a key partner to His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, in the broad-based arrangement. Mr. Speaker, this budget captures the ideals of the two great leaders, especially on the aspiration to transform our economy from its current status to a more developed nation status, a path to Canaan through Singapore. The extensive public participation throughout the budget process presents a solid basis and foundation for what is clearly the people's budget. Mr. Speaker, public participation is a constitutional imperative. In compliance with this requirement, I personally led extensive public engagements with Kenyans from across the country in the last 1 year. This was meant to get their views and inputs to the budget that I am presenting today. For example, I met youth and business community, particularly boda boda operators, Juakali artisans, leadership of the Mitumba sector, and scrap metal dealers. I also engaged extensively with members of the Fourth Estate, and in the process, launched their Financial Journalists Association. Additionally, I traveled to various regions and conducted numerous regional dialogues. These include Kilifi in December 2025 for the Coastal Region Dialogue, Migori in Nyanza, Kakamega in Western, and Eldoret and Nakuru in Rift Valley regions in the month of January 2026. Mr. Speaker, in February 2026, I traveled to Kiambu and Meru counties, while in May 2026, I met the youth and the business community from Kajiado and Nairobi regions. The month of May and June 2026 have been very intense in terms of engagement. Mr. Speaker, besides these regional dialogues, I joined Bunge la Mwananchi community at Jivanji Gardens, Nairobi, and Gumzo la Uchumi Mashinani in Busia County for conversation with faith-based organizations in May 2026. I have also, on numerous occasions, appeared in a number of television stations expounding on what we are doing and what we intend to do as a government. Further, in the same month of May 2026, I returned to my alma mater, the University of Nairobi, where I had a dialogue with comrades at the Chandaria Auditorium. Mr. Speaker, in my engagements with Mwananchi, I walked into a couple of shops to directly engage with the mobile phone dealers on the proposed tax changes, that is excise duty on mobile phones. Additionally, last Thursday, 4th of June 2026, I joined a panel of eminent professionals on the Citizen Digital X Space in unpacking the Finance Bill 2026. The eminent professionals included FCPA Professor Elizabeth Kalunda, the chairperson of Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, Mr. Fred Kimodo, Deloitte Tax Policy Lead, Mr. Raymond Mulenje, the Chief Executive Officer, Kenya Bankers Association, Mr. Tobias Alando, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and Mr. Kwame Owino, the Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Economic Affairs. A total of 15,847 Kenyans tuned in, while live listeners topped 14,249. Mr. Speaker, the message from Kenyans across the country, from our rural villages to our bustling towns and cities, the ordinary Mwananchi is clear and consistent in their messaging. They have genuine expectations from the government. Kenyans want an economy that works for them, an economy where the cost of living is manageable, where opportunities for employment and businesses are expanding, and where the benefits of economic growth are shared widely across society. Mr. Speaker, Wananchi want to see a government that listens to their concerns and responds with policies that promote opportunity, fairness, and prosperity. They want to see a government that protects their livelihoods, a government that supports farmers and small businesses, empowers the youth and women, and ensures that public resources are used prudently and transparently. Above all, the people of Kenya want assurance that their hard-earned taxes will translate into tangible improvements in their daily lives. Mr. Speaker, the main feedback from all these engagements was that the government should reduce the overall cost of living by lowering the tax burden on essential commodities, tame wastage of public resources, and decisively deal with corruption. Mr. Speaker, among the concerns and anxieties raised by Kenyans is the fear of potential outbreaks of infectious diseases, including Ebola, given the reported cases in some countries within the region. And so, Mr. Speaker, I wish to underscore that while Kenya is currently free of any confirmed Ebola virus disease, the government has activated the National Ebola Incident Management System to coordinate surveillance and response. Already, enhanced screening is taking place at all the points of entry, especially the airports and border points. The government has, in the meantime, trained over 1,000 health workers and put together a reserve team of 241 experts in epidemiology, laboratory services, and emergency response who remain on standby for rapid deployment. The government has also designated isolation and treatment facilities across the country, including at Kenyatta National Hospital and the National Police Service Hospital. The Ministry of Health is working closely with regional and international partners, including the World Health Organization, Africa CDC, IGAD, and the East African Community on this matter. Mr. Speaker, these efforts are further supported by our development partners. Already, the government of the United States of America has committed approximately $13.5 million towards health security interventions, including disease surveillance and emergency preparedness. In addition, the World Bank has mobilized resources under the Regional Recovery and Resilience Operation program, which will support, among others, interventions in strengthening the health systems. Mr. Speaker, these resources, complemented by domestic budgetary allocations, will significantly enhance Kenyans' capability and capacity to prevent, detect, and respond to Ebola and other epidemic-prone diseases while safeguarding livelihoods and maintaining economic stability. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, this demonstrates that this government is listening and responding to the concerns of citizens. On other concerns Kenyans raised with me during the public engagements I highlighted above, I will be elaborating on intervention that the government is putting in place to cushion Kenyans and improve their livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, the budget for financial year 2026-2027 will prioritize various interventions under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that promote private sector-led growth, expand employment opportunities, and enhance delivery of public services while preserving fiscal sustainability and building resilience against emerging economic challenges. Mr. Speaker, this budget is being presented at a time of heightened global uncertainty arising from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The conflict has disrupted global commodity markets and supply chains, weakened investor confidence, and tightened financial conditions. These developments have heightened risks to growth and inflation, increased pressure on public finances, and created uncertainty in global markets. For a developing economy such as Kenya, the impact is being felt through higher pump prices following a steep increase in global oil prices from an average of $63.06 per barrel in February 2026 to $94.4 per barrel by end of May 2026. In addition, tighter financing conditions, weakening export demand, slower investment flow, and rising cost of living continue to exert pressure on economic activities. Yet, even in this environment, new opportunities are emerging. Countries that strengthen competitiveness, deepen regional integration, and build resilient productive capacity will be the ones that will thrive. Mr. Speaker, it is against this backdrop that Kenya's economic journey over the past 3 years stands as a story of resilience. Difficult but necessary choices were made, delivering a steady recovery. Faced with significant domestic and external pressures and shocks, the government took difficult but necessary decisions to restore macroeconomic stability, strengthen public finances, and lay a firm foundation for sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the hard decisions are bearing fruits. Under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we have recorded clear gains. First, the Kenyan economy has remained resilient and registered an average rate of 5% in the period of 2022 to 2025, outperforming the average global growth rate of 3.4% and that of sub-Saharan Africa of 4.1%. Importantly, macroeconomic stability has been preserved. Confidence in our economy has actually strengthened, and the foundation for sustained growth are now firmly in place. Macroeconomic fundamentals such as inflation and exchange rate have strongly rebounded and are projected to remain stable. Interest rates have declined, supporting growth in private sector credit from the banking industry. We have also accumulated the highest levels of official foreign exchange reserves of $13.2 billion, which is equivalent to 5.6 months of import cover by May 2026, providing adequate cover and a buffer against short-term domestic and external shocks. Mr. Speaker, let me mention some of the key achievements. Since the rollout of BETTER, or Bottom-Up Economic Transformation Agenda, the agriculture sector has registered key gains that include the following: reduced fertilizer costs through government subsidy programs, increased marketed agricultural production, expanded food security interventions, and strengthened farmer support services targeting both smallholder and commercial farmers. Specifically, fertilizer disbursements under the fertilizer subsidy program have increased substantially to 21.3 million bags in 2025 from, listen to this, 1.4 million bags disbursed in 2022. While the cost of a 50-kilogram bag of fertilizer declined from 7,500 shillings per bag to 2,500 shillings per bag. As a result of this, farmers realized estimated savings of approximately 105 billion shillings over a 2-year period, enabling increased investment in production. Agricultural production has increased significantly between 2022 and 2025. For example, maize production almost doubling to 67 million bags in 2025 from 34 million bags in 2022. While maize imports have declined substantially to 3.3 million bags from 9.9 million bags over the same period, reflecting improved domestic efficiency. The increased production contributed to a decline of retail prices of a 2 kilogram packet of maize flour from an average of 250 shillings to an average of 165 shillings over the same period. Paddy rice production also increased significantly to 303,724 metric tons in 2025 from 192,299 metric tons in 2022. To support expanded cultivation, the area under rice production in public irrigation schemes increased from 48,324 acres to 71,624 acres. Potato production increased to 2.5 million tons in 2025 from 1.8 million tons in 2022. And milk production increased to 5.5 million liters in 2025 from 4.6 million liters. Let me repeat that. Production of milk has increased from 5.5 billion liters in 2025 from 4.6 billion liters in 2022. The increased production has improved food security, reduced dependence on food imports, and contributed to more stable food prices and higher farmer incomes. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, farmers across the other sector, various value chains, have enhanced production and benefited from higher earnings. Tea production has grown to 550.4 million kilograms in 2025 from 535 million kilograms in 2022, while tea export earnings rose significantly to Kenya shillings 187 billion from Kenya shillings 163 billion over the same period. To support rehabilitation of aging plantations and expansion of coffee acreage, the government distributed coffee seedlings progressively across the years, including 85,000 seedlings distributed in the financial year of 23-24, 809,000 seedlings in financial year 2024-2025, and 3,127,769 seedlings in financial year 2025-2026, and a further 2,242,769 coffee seedlings under the March to May 2026 long-range program. As a result of these interventions, the area under coffee has increased from 115,500 hectares in 2025 from 109,385 hectares in 2022. In the edible oils industry or sector, the area under edible crops increased significantly to 114,350 hectares in 2025 from 60,000 hectares in 2022, reflecting growing farmer participation and investment in the subsector. Further, Mr. Speaker, interventions under the sugar sector has led to significant growth in both cane production and processing capacity, with the area under sugarcane cultivation increasing by 19.4% and national sugar production rising to 815,454 metric tons in 2024 from 472,773 metric tons in 2022. Mr. Speaker, having spoken about agriculture, and you can see the kind of improvement that has taken place in agriculture, let me now turn to healthcare. Access to healthcare has expanded substantially through far-reaching reforms aimed at strengthening primary healthcare, improving service delivery, and ensuring sustainable health financing. A total of 31.2 million Kenyans are now registered under the Social Health Authority, compared to about 8 million under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund, while 228 primary care networks have been established and operationalized. A total of 107,831 community health promoters have been recruited and trained, while 16,810 medical interns have undergone internship, bringing healthcare services closer to communities. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the critical role the contracted healthcare facilities play in the delivery of healthcare services to Kenyans. It is with this in mind that the government in the current financial year of 25-26 allocated 4 billion for settlement of outstanding National Hospital Insurance Fund pending bills. And going forward, we will settle the balance of the bills that are owed under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund and which span over the years. Mr. Speaker, this allocation is specifically designated for settlement of NHIF pending bills owed to contracted health care facilities in accordance with the presidential directive that prioritized the clearance of outstanding obligations for facilities with claims not exceeding 10 million shillings. The claims earmarked for settlement under this allocation have been duly verified and adjudicated and will be fully paid before the close of this financial year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government will subsequently prioritize payment of the outstanding claims exceeding the 10 million threshold once verified in the next budget. Mr. Speaker, the government has accelerated implementation of the Affordable Housing Program to address Kenya's housing deficit, create jobs, stimulate local manufacturing, support MSMEs, strengthen county economies, and improve the quality of life for millions of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, through the program, number one, a total of 277,281 housing units have been completed or are under implementation nationwide as at May 2026. Two, the program has also successfully aggregated demand through the Boma Yangu platform, where more than 1 million Kenyans have registered their interest in home ownership, demonstrating both the scale of housing demand and growing public confidence in the government housing agenda. And I hope they will not listen to other voices outside there. Number three, to improve living conditions for students and support the expansion of higher education, the government has packaged 177,686 students' beds for development across universities, while 22,512 institutional housing units are under construction for our disciplined forces, teachers, healthcare workers, and other public servants. Number four, the program has also created over 640,442 jobs across the housing value chain through construction activities, professional services, manufacturing, logistics, and supporting industries. And of course, these are Kenyans who would be jobless if we didn't have their housing program. And number five, under the Modern Markets program, a total of 476 markets have been packaged for development nationwide, with 354 already under implementation. This will provide dignified trading spaces and support entrepreneurship, and that is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government continues to implement a number of interventions to empower our youth. And in particular, the government has, one, constructed 4 youth empowerment centers in Mwea, Chepalungu, Dagoretti North, and Mandera South constituencies. In addition, 25 youth empowerment centers have been equipped, bringing the total to 156 youth empowerment centers across the country. Number two, the government has also enhanced skills development and wealth creation through provision of loans to 93,559 youth entrepreneurs through the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. Additionally, 91,253 youth have benefited through startup grants under the National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement (NYOTA) program. The NYOTA program has also supported 51,604 youth through on-job experience in 26 counties across the country. And Number 3, government has also implemented Vijana Vuka na Afya project in Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa, where 72,623 youths have benefited from subsidized sexual reproductive health services. Mr. Speaker, in support of the creative economy, the government has established 3 film hubs in Dedan Kimathi University in Nyeri, and also in Bomet and in Migori counties, and fully equipped them with film production equipment. Additionally, a cinema theater has been established at Dedan Kimathi University of Technology with a capacity of 150 audiences. Further, to reach more youth, particularly in rural areas, a cinema Mashinani program has been rolled out. The government has also facilitated the production of 1,745 local and foreign films in Kenya and trained 1,847 filmmakers. Mr. Speaker, to further empower the youth, the government, in partnership with the United Nations Development Program, has developed the NextGen.ke initiative that will provide recently graduated youth with paid internship opportunities in the private sector, enabling them to acquire practical workplace experience and market-relevant skills. And I personally led the negotiation on this scope. To support this intervention, the government has committed an initial allocation of 2 billion towards its implementation. Mr. Speaker, given the scale of the youth employment challenge, the government further calls upon development partners, the private sector, philanthropic organizations, and other stakeholders to join this national effort, acknowledging that the task of creating opportunities for Kenya's youth extends beyond the capacity of government alone and requires a broad-based partnership for sustainable impact. Honorable members and Mr. Speaker and honorable members, to support MSMEs, the government has moved deliberately to put affordable credit, markets, and shared infrastructure directly into the hands of the enterprises and the young people at the base of the economy. To expand access to affordable credit, the government set up the Hustler Fund in 2022. Since then, the fund has actually disbursed 87 billion Kenya shillings to 28 million accounts and given 4.5 million people previously unscored or blacklisted Kenyans a formal credit history for the first time. Mr. Speaker, under the Nyota program, more than 5.6 billion has been invested in business skills training, mentorship, and startup capital, benefiting at least 84 youths in each of the country's 1,450 wards. And to promote value addition, the government has equipped 214 industrial development centers in our constituencies and opened regional markets to more than 1,100 of our enterprises, creating over 23,000 direct and indirect jobs. This is the bottom-up transformation at work, and in the coming year, we will scale it further. Mr. Speaker, the sustained investment by the government since 2022 has improved infrastructure development, thereby enhancing connectivity, boosting manufacturing, facilitating trade, and enhancing access to markets and essential services. Key achievements in this sector include the following. 1, expansion of road network across the country with over 2,669 kilometers of roads constructed and more than 132,000 kilometers maintained. Number 2, increase country's installed electricity generation capacity to 3,272 megawatts as at April 2026, with additional capacity expected from the 35 megawatts Globek power plant. To improve energy security and reliability, the government has modernized substations, strengthened the national grid, reduced system losses, and enhanced regional power interconnections. As a result, 73.45 kilometers of transmission lines and associated substations were constructed, while 200 kilometers of transmission lines were energized, including the Lesos, Kabarnet, Kitui Wote, and Sondu Homa Bay lines. In addition, 330 kilometers of distribution lines and 7 associated substations were also completed. Mr. Speaker, during the same period, access to electricity expanded significantly, with the number of customers connected rising from 8.9 million to over 10.2 million Kenyans. And number 3, industrialization is currently gaining momentum with 10 county aggregation and industrial parks constructed over the last 3 years to support value addition and create employment opportunities across the counties. Mr. Speaker, we have also invested heavily in critical social sectors and supported the vulnerable in the society. And as a result, a social protection program have been strengthened with 1.2 million vulnerable Kenyans currently supported under the Inua Jamii program, helping to improve household resilience and protect the most vulnerable members of our society. And access to education and skill development has expanded through the implementation of far-reaching reforms across the education sector, including successful implementation of the competency-based curriculum. Number 2, rollout of the student-centered funding model, through which nearly 500,000 university and TVET students have benefited from scholarships and loans based on need and merit. Number 3, recruitment of 100,000 teachers to strengthen teaching capacity and improve learner outcomes, a record in the history of any government in this country. Number 4, timely and consistent release, and I want to repeat, timely and consistent release of capitation funds to support learning in basic institutions. Number 5, construction of over 23,000 classrooms and commencement of 1,600 laboratories in partnership with the National Government Constituency Development Fund, which continues to do a good job and deliver services to this country. Revitalization of technical and vocational education and training, with enrollment increasing from 562,499 trainees in 2022 to currently 825,484 trainees in 2025. Mr. Speaker, access to clean and safe water has improved, with an additional 6 million Kenyans gaining access to water services through investment in key projects, thus enhancing public health and supporting economic activity. This comes as no surprise, considering that Kenya is a leader in designing innovative, paradigm-shifting, locally led climate action. Take the FLOCA program, for example. It has broken the barrier in financing locally prioritized and locally led resilience investments in 1,380 wards across 45 counties, benefiting more than 2.5 million beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, key among the FLOCA gold standard investments are the 58-kilometer rehabilitation of the Colonial Yatta Canal in Machakos County, a reverse osmosis water treatment facility in Makueni, and the Kolanya water project in Busia County. As a matter of fact, Kenya is the leading beneficiary of the Green Climate Fund, with a total of 37 projects approved and with a portfolio of more than $1 billion, a remarkable achievement that led Kenya's identification as the host of Green Climate Finance Africa Region Office. Mr. Speaker, the government has made strides in the blue economy. Gains made under it includes fish landing sites. 5 coastal counties have modern landing sites under development. Mwape in Kwale, Kenya shillings 255 million. Kidongo in Mombasa, 175 million shillings. Kilifi Central, 275 million. Kipini in Tana River, 151 million. Mokowe in Lamu, 239 million. Each of the sites includes ice and cold storage facilities, boat docking areas, processing points, ablution blocks, market stalls, and waste management system, supporting fish preservation, trade, and employment. These projects are scheduled for completion by June 2026. Also included in these gains is the lake site. There are 4 fish landing sites, 9 sites along Lake Victoria, including Asat, Ogal, Bumbe, Wichloom, Asembo Bay, Wakula, Mainuga, Nyandiwa, and Gorkachola at 1.49 billion by end of June 2026. Along Lake Turkana is also the Kalokol fish landing site, 182 million. Contractor on site includes docking facilities, cold storage and ice plants, fish processing areas, and market support infrastructure. There is also Lower Engak Fish Market, 185 million. Contractor on site, features cold storage, hygienic market stalls, and processing facilities to support fishers and traders. This is the inclusion that we need in this country. Mr. Speaker, the arid and semi-arid lands in the northern Kenya region has historically been marginalized. And to drive inclusion and transform the region, the government is implementing various interventions targeting infrastructure development and social inclusion programs. These include construction of a 750-kilometer northern Kenya Gateway Corridor that connects 3 expansive counties of Isiolo, Wajir, and Mandera to boost regional connectivity and trade. Under this, there are various ongoing roads that government is implementing with the support of development partners. Mr. Speaker, the government is also implementing various water interventions in the region through drilling and equipping of boreholes, construction of dams and water pans, and expansion of bulk water supply systems. Further, key interventions in the education sector include recruitment of 5,000 teachers in the hard-to-reach areas, integration of alternative learning systems like Duksi or Islamic religious schools and madrasa into formal education framework, construction of low-cost boarding facilities and dormitories in this region, provision of scholarships to protect vulnerable students from dropping out, and implementation of TVETs to equip pastoralist youth with hands-on skills. Finally, Mr. Speaker, devolution has been strengthened through the consistent and timely disbursement of resources to county governments, ensuring continuity in service delivery and implementation of county development programs. Since 2022, funding to county governments has steadily increased, with equitable share to counties increasing from 370 billion shillings in financial year 2022-23 budget to 428 billion Kenya shillings in the financial year 2026-27 budget. Total county allocations that include shareable revenue and additional allocations from the national government allocations, as well as donor proceeds, has therefore increased from 392 billion to 502 billion over the same period. This reflects government's unwavering commitment to safeguarding and strengthening devolution as a key pillar of inclusive national development. Mr. Speaker, while we take pride in these achievements, we cannot afford complacency. Global uncertainty persists, high cost of living continues to affect many households, youth unemployment persists, and climate-related shocks continue to affect livelihoods and production. Mr. Speaker, our task is therefore clear: to solve the many problems facing Kenyans by sustaining targeted interventions and better in order to accelerate job creation for our youth, grow investment and trade, and deepen economic resilience. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, we chose the theme of the financial year 2026-27 budget as sustaining the bottom-up economic transformation agenda for resilient and inclusive growth amid global uncertainty. This theme aligns with the current challenges and priorities of the government. And Mr. Speaker, as we move forward in implementing the government's transformation agenda, we remain mindful of all the concerns raised by Kenyans on the prevailing fiscal environment and the need for continued prudence in the management of public resources. The current fiscal position that is characterized by narrowing fiscal space calls for careful prioritization and disciplined execution of government programs. Mr. Speaker, let me speak plainly about the fiscal reality we face. Kenya's infrastructure financing deficit stands at approximately $5 billion every year. That's about 650 billion Kenya shillings. Our development budget, while growing, cannot close that gap alone. The era of financing every road, every power line, and every dam through government borrowing and taxation is over. Not because we lack ambitions, but because we have learned from the consequences of that model. Debt finance infrastructure has left us with more debt service obligations that crowd out the very spending our people need most on health, education, and social protection. So, Mr. Speaker, we are going to build better. We are shifting from a model where government borrows to build, to enhanced use of the public-private partnership, and the recently established National Infrastructure Fund in funding priority infrastructure through private sector finances. That is the foundation on which this government's infrastructure program rests. Mr. Speaker, the Rironi-Nakuru-Mau Summit Expressway stands as proof. Construction of the expressway is now underway, and Kenyans will be driving on a modern 4 to 6 lane expressway once completed. Thank you. What makes this project truly historic is not the speed of delivery, it is how it was financed. Through the participation of the National Social Security Fund, both as a debt and equity investor, alongside international investors, a major national highway is being built with Kenyan capital by Kenyan workers and for the Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, beyond the Rironi-Nakuru-Mau Summit project, the government will continue executing an ambitious infrastructure development plan through the National Infrastructure Fund. The fund will leverage on resources from privatization proceeds from mature national assets to attract private capital, domestic pension funds, and climate finance. Mr. Speaker, the rest of my statement now will present the economic context underpinning this budget, followed by the policy priorities, fiscal framework, expenditure proposals, and taxation measures for the financial year 2026-2027. I now turn to economic policy context, and I want to speak about the global context. Mr. Speaker, this budget, as I said earlier, has been prepared amidst heightened uncertainties associated with ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The conflict has disrupted critical energy infrastructure and major shipping routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, thereby exerting pressure, upward pressure on prices of energy and food. Mr. Speaker, against this backdrop, global growth is therefore projected to slow down to 3.1% in 2026 and 3.2% in 2027, from the average of 3.4% in both 2024 and 2025. Domestic economy. Back home, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the challenging global environment, the Kenyan economy has remained largely resilient, and the economy grew at an average of 5% in the period 2022 to 2025, outperforming the average global growth of 3.4% and that of sub-Saharan Africa of 4.1%. This performance reflects sound macroeconomic policy management, particularly prudent monetary and sound fiscal policies, sustained structural reforms, and the increasing diversification of the economy, which has enhanced its capacity to withstand severe shocks. Mr. Speaker, in 2025, the economy grew by 4.6% compared to a growth rate of 4.7% in 2024. This growth was supported by positive growth in all the sectors. All the sectors of the economy at least registered positive growth. The outlook for 2026 has been revised downwards, however, to 5% from the earlier projection of 5.3%, reflecting the adverse impact of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East to domestic economic activities. The economy is projected to maintain the momentum in 2027 with a projected growth rate of 5.2%. So, Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic indicators remain broadly stable through the emerging external pressures, though the emerging external pressures continue to impact domestic prices. And in particular, overall inflation increased to 6.7% in May 2026 from 5.6% in April and from 3.8% in May 2025 due to higher energy prices arising from the elevated global oil prices, but remained within the target range of plus or minus 2.5% over and above 5%. Inflation is expected to remain within the target range in the near term, assuming a de-escalation of the conflict in the Middle East and supported by appropriate monetary policy actions and government interventions. Expected stability in food prices due to favorable weather conditions and the stability in the exchange rate. Mr. Speaker, in April 2026, the government has deployed targeted stabilization measures to cushion consumers from the full impact of rising global fuel prices. These interventions include use of resources in the Petroleum Development Levy Fund to subsidize the fuel pump prices. And in addition, the government lowered the VAT rate on petroleum products for 3 months from 16% to 8%. Mr. Speaker, monetary conditions have eased considerably. This follows reduction in the central bank rate from 11.25% in December 2024 to the current rate of 8.7%. And I'm happy the CBK maintained the same rate for the time being. As a result, interest rates have declined over the same period. The 91-day Treasury bill rate declined about 8.3% in May 2026 from 10.3% in December 2024. Similarly, average commercial banks lending rates declined to 14.5% in May 2026 from 16.9% in May 2025 and 17.2% in November 2024. Reflecting the decline in the lending rates, credit to the private sector expanded by 9.3% in the year to May 2026 from 2% in the year to May 2025 and a contraction of 1.4% in December 2024. The external sector remains resilient despite emerging risks. The current account deficit is projected at 3% of GDP in 2026 compared to 2.1% of GDP in 2025, reflecting the higher international oil prices, lower receipts from services, slower growth in remittance inflows, and reduced exports. This is due to the adverse impact of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. At the same time, official foreign exchange reserves remains adequate, as I mentioned, at USD 13 billion in May 2026, equivalent to 5.6 months of import cover, and continues to provide adequate cover and a buffer against short-term domestic and external shocks. The exchange rate has also remained broadly stable, averaging 129.4 shillings per US dollar in May 2026. And activities in Nairobi Securities Exchange have improved over the past 1 year. The Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index rose by 59.9% to 3,491 points in May 2026, up from 2,183 points in May 2025, while market capitalization expanded by 61.6% to 3,412 billion from Kenya shillings 2.11 billion over the same period, trillion over the same period. However, between February and May 2026, the Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index declined by 5.5% as investors became cautious of the rising global uncertainty associated with the conflict in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy stance for financial year 2026-27 and the medium term is anchored on a fiscal consolidation strategy that advances the priorities of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda while safeguarding debt sustainability and provision of essential public services. The strategy will be supported by continuous domestic revenue mobilization and expenditure rationalization through targeted tax and expenditure reforms. As a result, the fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected to decline gradually from 5.5% of GDP in the financial year 26-27 to 3.3% of GDP in financial year 28-29. Risks remain though. Domestically, climate-related shocks could disrupt agricultural production and infrastructure, while externally, geopolitical tensions, commodity price volatility, weaker global growth, and tighter financial conditions continue to adversely affect inflation, exports, and capital flows. The government will continue to monitor evolution of these risks closely and deploy timely policy intervention to safeguard stability, strengthen resilience, and sustain inclusive economic growth. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to the policy priorities and strategic interventions that will underpin the budget for financial year 2026-2027. Policy priorities and structural reforms. It will be anchored on bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, the economic context I have outlined is a clear reminder that we are operating in a period that demands resolve, discipline, and decisive actions. The convergence of global shocks and domestic pressures calls not only for incremental adjustments, but for bold and well-coordinated policy responses. In this regard, the government has taken and will continue to take firm and where necessary, decisive actions to consolidate recent gains, safeguard macroeconomic stability, protect livelihoods, and strengthen economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, our focus is not only on navigating the immediate challenges, but also on accelerating structural transformation, creating jobs at scale, and ensuring that the benefits of growth are broadly shared among all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, these interventions are being implemented within a coherent and forward-looking framework anchored on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Better remains the government's principal vehicle for translating policy into tangible outcome, and at the household level by aligning investments, reforms, and institutions around the goal of inclusive growth and shared prosperity. Through the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, 5 core priority pillars, the government is scaling targeted interventions that address binding constraints to productivity, expand economic opportunities, and strengthen resilience across sectors. These priority pillars are deliberately structured to reinforce one another, ensuring that progress in one area catalyzes gains across the broader economy. Mr. Speaker, the government also continues to implement complementary cross-cutting policy interventions to sustain economic resilience, accelerate inclusive growth, and improve business environment. This will create a seamless transition to the next frontier of economic transformation. These interventions include the following. 1. Strengthening fiscal and monetary policy coordination to safeguard economic stability and reinforce investor confidence. 2. Enhancing fiscal sustainability by expanding domestic revenue mobilization and improving efficiency of public expenditure. 3. Modernization of strategic infrastructure in transport and logistics, energy, and water sector to improve productivity, connect markets, lower the cost of doing business, and enhance competitiveness. 4. Supporting industrial development, trade, tourism, blue economy, MSMEs, and innovation to accelerate job creation, broaden economic opportunities, and transform Kenya's economy to a net exporter of goods and services. 5. Strengthening environmental conservation and climate change, mitigation and adaptation measures to promote sustainable development and resilience. And 6. Supporting human capital development through continued investment in quality education, universal health care, and well-targeted social protection interventions. 7. Advancing youth empowerment through targeted investment in skills development, entrepreneurship, digital opportunities, and access to affordable financing. And 8. Strengthening governance reforms to enhance public service delivery. Now I want to talk about evidence-based decision-making. Mr. Speaker, as we implement this budget, the government reaffirms its commitment to strengthening economic planning and development as the foundation of sustainable growth. Prudent resource allocation and improved service delivery to our citizens. In the coming financial year, we will intensify efforts to institutionalize evidence-based planning and decision-making across all levels of government. This approach will ensure that public resources are directed to interventions that deliver the highest economic and social returns, aligning with the national development priorities. To achieve this, the government will accelerate the finalization and implementation of a comprehensive economic planning policy and an economic planning bill. These two instruments will create a coherent, transparent mechanism for identifying, prioritizing, and sequencing government policies, programs, and projects based on rigorous economic analysis, affordability, and measurable impact. Mr. Speaker, we will also continue to invest in national statistical system, policy research, data analytics, and monitoring and evaluation to provide timely, reliable evidence for decision-making. Integrated planning and data management system will be rolled out to improve coordination among ministries, departments, agencies, and even county governments. Mr. Speaker, through these measures, we will foster a culture of evidence-based policy making, strengthen public accountability, and ensure that every shilling spent delivers maximum value to the people of Kenya. On the policy and legal and institutional reforms front, Mr. Speaker, to strengthen economic stability, the government continues to roll out targeted structural, institutional, and regulatory reforms to improve the business environment, boost public services efficiency, and reinforce accountability in public finances. In building resilience against climate change, Mr. Speaker, the government has continued to make concerted efforts to strengthen disaster risk management. The recently enacted National Disaster Risk Management Bill, which is now an act of parliament, and I thank this National Assembly, provides a legal framework for coordination of disaster risk management activities across the two levels of government, supporting prompt responses when disasters occur. Mr. Speaker, to further strengthen the country's preparedness and response to climate-related risk, the National Treasury is spearheading the development of a new disaster risk financing strategy for the period 2026-2030, since the earlier strategy for the year 2018-2022 came to an end. Mr. Speaker, and in response to changes in climate, the government will continue to implement the Financing Locally Led Climate Action Program, a transformative initiative that has unlocked green investments at the county level, empowering local communities to adapt to impacts of climate change. Mr. Speaker, to finance large-scale climate and environmental projects, the government will establish the Kenya Green Investment Facility in line with the Kenya's commitments under the nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. To further scale green financing, the government is finalizing the framework for issuance of sustainability-linked bonds with targets in forestry and rural electrification expansion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya secured the hosting rights for the Green Climate Fund Regional Office for East and Southern Africa in Nairobi, reinforcing the country's position as a regional green finance hub. Further, the National Treasury is at an advanced stage of accreditation as a direct access entity to the Green Climate Fund, enabling the country increase public sector-driven climate investments and opportunities. Mr. Speaker, the government will host the African Green Investment Forum in October 2026. And this forum will serve as a flagship continental initiative designed to mobilize substantial green finance, accelerate sustainable investments, and advance Africa's leadership in this domain. On public procurement reforms, integrated with core government systems, including IFMIS, Business Registration Services, and ITAX, with initial onboarding prioritizing national government ministries, departments, and agencies. State corporations and county governments will then follow. Significant progress has been made, and to date, 1,543 procuring entities have been registered, over 40,000 suppliers registered, over 22,000 staff trained, over 12,000 suppliers or contractors have also been trained. 652 annual procurement plans have been published and over 8,000 tenders published. Mr. Speaker, going forward, the next steps will include full rollout of the system to all schools and other procuring entities that are yet to onboard to the EGP system. Continuous user training and change management to improve adoption and system utilization will be conducted. Further, Mr. Speaker, beginning July 1st, 2026, there will be no exemption. There will be no exemption to procure outside the system. Together, these measures will ensure that every shilling allocated through this budget delivers maximum value to Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, during the implementation of the EGP system, we have experienced challenges which have hindered Thank you. Mr. Speaker, during the implementation of EGP system, we have experienced challenges which have hindered the seamless implementation of the system. Some of these challenges include resistance from users and litigation in the courts. Mr. Speaker, to further strengthen our procurement framework, the government developed the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Bill, Amendment Bill 2026, among the key reform areas in the bill, which include mandatory disclosure and reporting requirements, promotion of local content, and preference and reservation schemes, especially for youth, women, and persons with disabilities, and provision of a stronger legal basis for electronic procurement and framework contracting. Mr. Speaker, I submitted this bill of 2026 to Parliament for consideration and approval. I urge the House to favorably consider the bill. I want to now speak about the reforms under the state corporations. Mr. Speaker, state corporations remain a cornerstone of Kenya's development architecture, delivering essential public services and catalyzing strategic investments. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned in my statement last year that the government embarked on a comprehensive reforms which target to streamline mandates, strengthen governance, enhance accountability, and improve operational efficiency of state-owned enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of the reforms is ongoing through a multi-agency technical working committee. In the first phase, the committee considered 23 mergers, 16 dissolutions, 7 transfers of functions back to ministries, departments and agencies, and the declassification of selected state corporations. Mr. Speaker, under phase 1 of the reforms, the committee has finalized the review of enabling legislations of the affected state corporations and drafted appropriate bills where necessary. Review of the staff complements, skills and placement deployment of those affected so as to facilitate a smooth transition and documentation of assets and liabilities of the entities identified. I submitted to this House the draft bill supporting the implementation of the reforms under phase 1, and I urge the honorable members to favorably consider the bills to enable timely implementation of the reforms. Now let me speak about the new kid in the town, government-owned enterprises. Mr. Speaker, further, as part of the reforms, the Government-Owned Enterprises Act number 25 of 2025 was assented to by His Excellency the President on 21st November 2025 and came into effect on 5th December 2025. The Act provides a modern framework for the ownership, oversight and management of commercial state corporations. Under the Act, the Independent Search and Selection Panel has begun the process of recruiting independent directors of the Board of GOEs. All the government-owned enterprises are required to operate as commercial entities, that is for profit, be self-financing, be self-sustaining, and accountable to the public through the National Treasury. Let me now speak about National Infrastructure Fund. Mr. Speaker, in March 2026, the government established the National Infrastructure Fund following the enactment of the National Infrastructure Act of 2026. The NIF is an innovative mechanism for scaling up infrastructure development by mobilizing private capital and expertise to execute commercially viable infrastructure projects while reducing reliance on taxation and debt. The fund will promote growth of infrastructure projects by pooling capital from diverse sources, which include pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, private equity, banks, development finance institutions, among others, to finance large-scale and long-term projects. In this respect, Mr. Speaker, the proceeds from privatization will be channeled into the fund, that ensuring transparent revenue flow in financing national priority projects, including national highways, airports, seaports, electricity generation, ICT, water and irrigation, and agribusiness. As a start, the proceeds from the March 2026 IPO of Kenya Pipeline Company of 106 billion Kenya shillings, as well as the expected 204 billion Kenya shillings from the partial divestiture of the government's stake in Safaricom to Vodacom, will form the seed capital to the fund. Under Sovereign Wealth Fund, Mr. Speaker, to complement the National Infrastructure Fund, the government has submitted to this August House the bill to establish the Sovereign Wealth Fund with 3 distinct components. The first component is the stabilization component, then there is the strategic infrastructure investment component, and finally, the future generation, also known as URIDI component. And this fund will bring into operation Article 201 of the Constitution on intergenerational equity by ensuring that natural resources wealth is invested productively and spread equitably to both current and future generations. Let me now talk about speak to sugar reforms, or the reforms in the sugar sector. Mr. Speaker, the government has also taken practical steps to deliver its promise to modernize the sugar mills and transform these once struggling factories into productive, sustainable enterprises. The sugar sector reform program has been significantly progressed following the implementation of the government leasing framework for state-owned sugar companies. The leasing process has since been successfully concluded, with investors having fully taken over operations of the sugar factories, namely Chemelez Sugar Company, Moroni Sugar Company, South Nyanza Sugar Company, and Zoia Sugar Company. Mr. Speaker, since the resumption of operations, substantial investments have been undertaken towards rehabilitation and modernization of the factories, resulting in significant revamping of the mills and improvement of operational capacity. These initiatives are expected to enhance efficiency, restore profitability, and protect the livelihoods of farmers. Mr. Speaker, these are not isolated transactions. They are proof that when governance is strengthened, when mandates are clarified, and when institutions are held to account, the corporations can be genuine engines of growth. The government will press forward, deepening these reforms and ensuring that every public enterprise earns its place through performance, transparency, and value created. Now, let me speak to national assets and inventory management. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen national assets management, the National Treasury has operationalized the assets and inventory management modules in our IFMIS, providing real-time visibility of public assets across all levels of government. An analysis of the asset registers shows that ministries, departments, and agencies collectively hold assets valued at approximately 4.9 trillion Kenya shillings, underscoring the importance of robust asset management. To strengthen transparency and support the transition to accrual accounting, the National Treasury has developed a government asset valuation policy framework and a public assets tagging framework. Mr. Speaker, to unlock greater value from these assets without placing additional pressure on public finances, the National Treasury is developing an asset optimization framework and a leasing framework to attract private capital and expertise while supporting infrastructure development and improved service delivery. Now let me speak to digital e-signatures in government. Mr. Speaker, in line with the digital transformation agenda, the government has also embarked on reforms to modernize and harmonize the legal and regulatory framework governing secure digital identities, electronic signatures, electronic seals, and time stamping services. Excuse me. Mr. Speaker, to make this a reality, I will in the next financial year submit to this House necessary amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and Kenya Information and Communication Act, as well as the attendant regulations. This will make use of electronic signatures, electronic seals, and time stamping services a reality in government, thereby creating efficiency in service delivery. Mr. Speaker, let me speak to something that has been troubling, the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, as I informed this House in my statement last year, the pending bills verification committee was established in November 2023 to review and validate outstanding claims and provide a credible basis for settlement. The committee has since concluded its work and analyzed a total of 91,911 pending bill claims valued at over 637 billion shillings. Following this verification exercise, 29,885 claims amounting to 235.6 billion have been recommended for settlement. Of this amount, Kenya shillings 80.3 billion has already been settled through securitization in the road sector, leaving a verified outstanding balance of 155.3 billion Kenya shillings for other sectors. Mr. Speaker, to settle the verified outstanding balance of 155.3 billion Kenya shillings, the National Treasury has proposed a balanced and sustainable settlement strategy, which includes a combination of direct budgetary allocations and securitization. The proposal is to settle the verified outstanding balance of 155.3 billion over 2 years, starting with the financial year 2026-2027. Mr. Speaker, in the financial year 2026-27, the National Treasury is proposing a budgetary provision of 68 billion to settle the verified pending bills to suppliers and contractors owed by the government for amounts of up to 100 million shillings. This provision will also partly settle suppliers or contractors whose pending bills exceed 100 million shillings, ensuring that no supplier is excluded. With the settlement of this 68 billion worth of claims, the government will have settled 99% of the verified outstanding pending bills, representing 63% of the total value, a tremendous progress. Now, in terms of numbers, this will be 99 of the bills. But the remaining 88 billion worth of claims will be addressed through other budgetary provisions and instruments. Mr. Speaker, the deliberate policy of settling pending bills of up to 100 million Kenya shillings, while individually smaller in value, accounts for the majority of suppliers and have the highest multiplier effect on economic activity. This is to ensure that the micro, small, and medium enterprises are not starved of the essential working capital, which is critical to the sustainability of their businesses. Financial sector reforms. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's financial sector remains strong and continues to support households, businesses, savings, and investment across the country. Mr. Speaker, today, the banking sector remains strong, very stable and profitable, supported by adequate capital and liquidity buffers. In the year to March 2026, total banking sector assets grew by 13.8% from 7.7 trillion to 8.7 trillion, and profitability increased by 13.6% from 73 billion Kenya shilling to 83.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen the banking sector's resilience, deepen competition, and improve access to credit for households and businesses, the government is implementing the following reforms. 1. Progressive increase in minimum core capital requirements for commercial banks from 1 billion to 10 billion by December 2029. 2. Lifted the moratorium on licensing of new commercial banks effective 1st July 2025. 3. Implementation of the revised risk-based credit pricing model anchored on the Kenya shilling overnight interbank average to enhance transparency and fairness in loan pricing and strengthen monetary policy transmission. And number 4, implementation of the banking penalties regulations 2025 to strengthen enforcement, governance, accountability, and compliance in the banking sector. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen banking sector's resilience and stability, the Business Laws Amendment Act of 2024 requires commercial banks to progressively raise the minimum core capital from 1 billion to 10 billion Kenya shillings by 2029 through targeted milestones. Mr. Speaker, while the government firmly upholds the strategic necessity of raising the minimum core capital, it is prudent that this transition be managed in a manner that is least disruptive to credit access and financial services delivery, particularly to the micro, small, and medium enterprise segment and other niche markets currently served by the banking industry. Mr. Speaker, to allow flexibility in achieving this objective and following wide consultation, especially with Kenya Bankers Association, I will be proposing amendments to the timeline specified in the Business Laws Amendment Act of 2024 to allow commercial banks raise the minimum core capital to 10 billion by 31st December 2032 without the annual milestones. This will provide the flexibility necessary for institutions to pursue measured, commercially sound, and market-sensitive capital-raising strategies in a manner that preserves shareholder value and sustains investor confidence. Mr. Speaker, to make it easier and cheaper for Kenyans and businesses to send and receive money across East Africa region, partner states are working to connect their financial system as per the East African Community Payment System Master Plan of 2025 so that transactions are faster, more affordable, and more efficient to support trade and regional integration. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard the country against illicit financial flows, the government has over the last 2 years undertaken far-reaching reforms aimed at strengthening our anti-money laundering, counter-financing of terrorism, and counter-proliferation financing framework following the country's placement on the Financial Action Task Force Grey List in February 2024. These reforms include the adoption of the Virtual Asset Service Providers legal framework, strengthening beneficial ownership transparency, enhancing risk-based supervision across financial and designated non-financial business and professions sectors, improving interagency collaboration, and increasing investigations, prosecutions, and asset recovery efforts relating to money laundering and terrorism financing offenses. Further, Mr. Speaker, reporting institutions have continued to enhance compliance with AML and CFT obligations, thereby reinforcing the integrity and resilience of our financial system. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has actually made substantial progress in addressing the action items under the FATS Action Plan, with only a few outstanding measures remaining as we approach the conclusion of the implementation period. The government remains fully committed to finalizing the remaining reforms and securing Kenya's exit from the grey list at the earliest opportunity. These achievements demonstrate our unwavering resolve to align Kenya with the international best practices, safeguard the country against illicit financial flows, and strengthen investor confidence in our economy. And Mr. Speaker, the government is also supporting innovation in financial services through the implementation of the Virtual Asset Service Providers Act of 2025. And in this regard, we have developed regulations to govern virtual asset service providers. The regulations framework ensures that new technologies operate in a safe and regulated environment that protects users, strengthens financial stability, and encourages responsible innovation. Under capital markets, Mr. Speaker, I have the following to say. The government continues to implement measures to deepen and broaden capital markets in order to mobilize savings for productive long-term investment. These efforts have continued to yield results, with the Nairobi Securities Exchange recording exceptional performance in 2025. Mr. Speaker, the capital market supported the recent initial public offering by the Kenya Pipeline Company and its subsequent listing at the Nairobi Securities Exchange in March 2026. Further, the capital market supported recent issuances by various companies to raise capital. These include 44 billion Kenya shillings, Sharia-compliant leasing bond for infrastructure financing. The Safaricom's Kenya shillings 20 billion green bond to support 5G expansion. The East Africa Breweries PLC Kenya shilling 16.8 billion medium-term note program, and the Kenya shilling 3.4 billion by Spearhead Africa Infrastructure Fund to support long-term infrastructure financing across the region. Mr. Speaker, innovation in market access has advanced significantly with the launch of ZD trading application integrated into the M-Pesa platform. And this groundbreaking platform enables Kenyans to conveniently buy and sell securities through their mobile phones, marking a major milestone in financial inclusion and retail investor participation. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is emerging as a key player in the carbon credit space, leveraging its rich natural resources and a strong base in renewable energy to participate in global climate markets. To actualize formal trading of carbon credits, the government is preparing carbon credit regulations, and these regulations will allow the government and private sector players to benefit through trading of carbon credits generated in Kenya and the region. And Mr. Speaker, in my recent public engagements, coffee farmers raised concerns of continued exploitation by middlemen in the marketing and pricing of their coffee. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure Kenyans that through the reforms the government is implementing at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange, the exploitative middlemen have been eliminated, ensuring farmers retain a much larger share of the export price of their coffee. Farmers today are able to sell their coffee directly at the exchange, supported by their various brokerage firms, majority of whom are owned by the farmers through their cooperative societies. The Nairobi Coffee Exchange has also enabled price discovery, thereby improving earnings by the coffee farmers. And to further support prompt payment of coffee sold through Nairobi Coffee Exchange, the government introduced the direct settlement system that has reduced payment delays across the coffee value chain. Mr. Speaker, coffee's traceability is today a reality. Through the Nairobi Coffee Exchange trading platform and the direct settlement system, cataloging and invoicing, every coffee lot has a unique identification, milling data, warehouse records, auction sales, and buyer data that can be accessed, allowing traceability of coffee from the farm to the buyer. This has created greater buyer confidence of the origin, quality, and authenticity of Kenyan coffee by eliminating coffee laundering. On pension reforms, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, delayed pension processing has for long been a source of frustration and hardship for retiring public servants. A civil servant who has dedicated their career to public service deserves timely and dignified access to their retirement benefits. Mr. Speaker, to hasten the processing of pension claims, I launched the e-pension management information system on 1st June 2026. Following this launch, we have now discontinued manual submission of pension claims unless expressly authorized by the National Treasury. Mr. Speaker, to ensure this reform delivers a lasting impact, ministries, departments, and agencies are now required to initiate pension claims at least 9 months before public officers' retirement date. This will facilitate resolutions of late or incomplete submission of pension claims ahead of the retirement date for our employees. Further, the National Treasury, in collaboration with the Kenya School of Government, will institutionalize electronic pension management information system training as part of a continuous capacity building program to ensure sustained competency in pension administration across the public sector. Insurance reforms. Mr. Speaker, to expand access to insurance, the Insurance Regulatory Authority licensed 5 micro-insurance companies in financial year 24-25. This has increased access to affordable insurance, with over 11 million lives covered as at 31st December 2025. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen climate resilience, The government is promoting agricultural and index-based insurance products. Through the drive, which is de-risking, inclusivity, and value enhancement, livestock insurance project over 2.7 million livestock valued at 29.3 billion have been insured, while payouts exceeding 648 million have supported pastoral communities affected by drought since 2023. Further, the government has initiated amendments to the Insurance Act to establish agricultural insurance as a standalone class of insurance business. This reform will strengthen the regulatory framework for agricultural risk management and support food security, financial inclusion, and sustainable agricultural development. And Mr. Speaker, to deepen local insurance capacity and retain insurance premium within the domestic economy, the government will effective 1st July 2026 require all importers to obtain marine cargo insurance cover from insurance license under the Insurance Act prior to customs clearance. Fiscal policy framework. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of financial year 25-26 budget has remained broadly on course despite emerging pressures on revenue performance and expenditure demands. These developments have necessitated measured adjustments while at the same time informing a more deliberate and responsive fiscal policy stance for the financial year 26-27 and the medium term. And Mr. Speaker, on the revenue front, performance has fallen short of target in the financial year 2025-26. This is due to slower than expected tax receipts, largely driven by administrative constraints and a slowdown in economic activities. At the same time, expenditure pressures have intensified. The implementation of pending and newly negotiated collective bargaining agreements has raised the public sector wage bill beyond initial projections, thereby constraining fiscal space. In addition, emergency interventions in response to floods and drought have required additional resources. As a result of these developments, it became necessary to introduce targeted adjustment through supplementary budget number 1 of financial year 25-26. Mr. Speaker, to enhance tax administration, including upgrading of critical systems and strengthening of compliance efforts, the Kenya Revenue Authority was allocated additional resources in the supplementary budget number 1 for financial year 2025-27, to be exact, 17 billion. These interventions are expected to improve efficiency and support a recovery revenue performance. The supplementary budget 1 also reflected additional expenditure of 368.6 billion compared to the original budget to cater for the emerging expenditure pressures. In this regard, the fiscal deficit, including grants, is now projected at 1,199 billion, equivalent to 6.4% of GDP, compared to 901 billion or 4.7% of GDP in the original budget estimates. Mr. Speaker, fiscal policy is not merely about balancing budget. It is about creating conditions for sustainable growth, protecting the vulnerable and securing prosperity for the future generation. Accordingly, the fiscal policy for 26-27 and the medium term will be anchored on a growth-supportive consolidation path aligned to the government's priorities under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and the 4th medium-term plan. The policy will prioritize enhanced domestic revenue mobilization, strengthen expenditure control, and strategic reprioritization of public spending. This approach aims to reinforce public debt sustainability and safeguard essential public service. Now let me turn to domestic revenue mobilization. Mr. Speaker, every shilling of development begins with every shilling of revenue collected fairly, efficiently, and transparently. To boost revenues, the government will continue to strengthen implementation of the national tax policy and medium-term revenue strategy, aimed at simplifying tax laws, rationalizing tax expenditures, and creating a fair, predictable, and efficient tax systems. Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Revenue Authority has intensified reforms to modernize tax administration, enhance compliance, and improve service delivery through technology and innovation. Notable progress has been made in expanding the electronic tax invoice management system, with over 655,000 taxpayers now onboarded, significantly enhancing transaction visibility and strengthening VAT compliance. Integration between iTax and customs systems has improved end-to-end taxpayer visibility, while the rollout of the electronic rental income tax system has simplified. I want to repeat that. While the rollout of the electronic rental income tax system has simplified compliance with the rental sector. So we have already implemented the system that I think some people are still dreaming about out there. Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Revenue Authority has also strengthened enforcement through data-driven compliance strategies, artificial intelligence, and non-intrusive cargo scanning technologies, enhancing the detection of illicit trade and reducing revenue leakages. As a result, the active taxpayer base increased by 82,000 to over 6.6 million taxpayers as at March 2026 from 6.5 million as at March 2025, reflecting a growing voluntary compliance and improved taxpayer engagement. And I want to thank Kenyans for this. Mr. Speaker, service delivery and trade facilitation have equally improved through initiatives such as Huduma Popote and enhanced customs systems, which have reduced cargo clearance times and improved operational efficiency. Mr. Speaker, in the financial year 26-27, Kenya Revenue Authority will intensify reforms to strengthen revenue mobilization, modernize tax administration, and improve taxpayer experience through the following measures. Number one, roll out integrated digital tax administration and revenue monitoring systems, including the domestic tax administration system, expanded electronic invoicing, virtual electronic tax registers, enhanced point-of-sale integration, and the e-customs mobile application to improve efficiency, compliance, and real-time visibility of transactions. Number two, implement device identification and registration and strengthen exchange of information frameworks to combat tax evasion, illicit trade, and cross-border revenue leakages. Number three, simplifies taxpayer processes through pre-populated returns, streamline digital payment solutions, and expanded digital service delivery platforms to reduce the cost and burden of compliance. And number four, expand taxpayer outreach and support through initiatives such as Ushuru GPT, Omni-channel customer engagement system, Huduma Popote, and Ushuru Mashinani to enhance accessibility and responsiveness. Number five, strengthen enforcement, compliance, and revenue assurance through advanced data analytics, artificial intelligence, and integrated investigation and case management system. And number six, invest in core ICT infrastructure, integrated enterprise platform, and cybersecurity system to safeguard the integrity, resilience, and efficiency of revenue administration. So, Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to scale up non-tax revenues by strengthening the capacity of ministries, departments, and agencies to efficiently generate income from public services while enhancing their operational system to improve efficiency and overall revenue performance. Now, I want to speak to improving efficiency of the public expenditure. Mr. Speaker, raising revenue is only half the equation. Ensuring that every shilling delivers maximum value is equally important. And in order to improve the efficiency and value for money of public expenditure, the government is implementing targeted reforms to strengthen expenditure controls, enhance transparency, and improve public sector efficiency. These reforms include the full rollout of e-government procurement, completion of key treasury single account reforms, and transition to accrual-based accounting to strengthen cash management, fiscal oversight, and financial reporting. The government will also deepen public financial management reforms through the entrenchment of zero-based budgeting, digitization and automation of pension and payroll administration, and strengthen human resource management system to enhance efficiency, accountability, and service delivery across the public sector. Further, the government will optimize the management of public assets and liabilities, accelerate state corporation reforms and targeted privatization, and scale up the use of public-private partnerships to provide private sector or private capital, improve efficiency, and support delivery of commercially viable projects. Mr. Speaker, allow me now to expound on some of the expenditure reforms that we are implementing. One, migration to accrual accounting. Mr. Speaker, effective public finance management begins with what we own, what we owe, and how public resources are being utilized. To improve cash management, the government is implementing one of the most significant financial management reforms in Kenya's history. The transition from cash basis to accrual basis of accounting under the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Following cabinet approval of the transition roadmap in March 2024, implementation commenced in financial year 2024-25 through a structured three-year phased approach led by the National Treasury. Mr. Speaker, this reform fundamentally changes how government accounts for public resources. For the first time, Kenya's financial statements will present a complete and accurate picture of the country's financial position, capturing not just cash flows, but all public sector assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenditures. Public debt obligations, infrastructure assets, inventories, receivables, and payables will all be recognized and reported transparently, giving Parliament, citizens, and investors a true account of the nation's financial health. Mr. Speaker, implementation is progressing as scheduled across 3 phases. The first phase addressed financial assets and liabilities. The current phase incorporates inventories and prepayments. The final phase will bring in all remaining assets and liabilities, culminating in full consolidation of public sector entities, that is, consolidation of financial statements. To support this transition, the government is upgrading IFMIS and related systems, strengthening public sector asset management framework, undertaking asset identification and evaluation exercises across ministries, departments and agencies, counties and other public entities, and building capacity among public officers to sustain the reform beyond its implementation period. Mr. Speaker, this reform is not just about accounting standards. It is about accountability. It's about ensuring that those entrusted with public resources can be held to a higher standard of transparency and reinforcing public confidence in the stewardship of national resources. Number 2 is the Treasury single account. Mr. Speaker, as I had informed this House in last year's budget statement, the government has been implementing the Treasury single account framework to strengthen cash management and improve efficiency of public financial operations. Following the successful rollout of the Treasury single account to all ministries, the government has reduced the cost of overdraft financing from Central Bank of Kenya by 61% in this financial year, translating into substantial savings. I want again to pause there. I saw some people talking about reforming this so that there can be savings. I want to repeat that the government has reduced the cost of overdraft financing from Central Bank of Kenya by 61% in this financial year, translating already into substantial savings. So the work that you intend to do is actually already done. Mr. Speaker, the implemented Treasury single account model directly links invoices to specific batches submitted by ministries, departments, among other enhanced features. These Treasury single account reforms have substantially improved the efficiency of government exchequer operations, delivered transparency in exchequer and cash management, and ensured that public funds are released only against verified and approved obligations, thus laying the foundation for managing pending bills, and there is going to be no more cherry picking of invoices for payments. So, Mr. Speaker, building on this momentum in the financial year 26-27, the government will expand or extend the Treasury single account framework to county governments by completing the automation of county exchequer requisition processes, after which counties will progressively migrate to a Treasury single account architecture mirroring that of the national government. And 2, operationalize in collaboration with the CBK a granular data integration system to deliver real-time visibility of the cash and liquidity positions of state corporations and semi-autonomous government agencies. Mr. Speaker, taken together, these reforms represent significant modernization of our public cash management architecture. They are already delivering measurable savings, deepening fiscal transparency, and strengthening our capacity to deliver value for every shilling of public money. Let me now talk about strengthening the internal audit oversight and fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, every shilling entrusted to government must be accounted for and deliver value to the people of Kenya. The recurrence of audit queries and delays in implementing audit recommendations across public institutions continue to expose public resources to fiscal risk and weaken service delivery. And Mr. Speaker, to strengthen accountability, fiscal discipline, and support the government's zero-fault audit initiative, the government will introduce amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and related regulations to strengthen the mandate of the Office of the Internal Auditor General, and enhance oversight across the public sector. I am strengthening the Office of the Internal Audit. The reforms will establish a framework for tracking the implementation of audit recommendations and resolutions issued by Parliament, the Office of the Auditor General, audit committees, and other oversight institutions with clear accountability mechanisms for non-compliance. The government will also strengthen internal audit functions across public entities, roll out integrated internal audit management system, and enhance the adoption of enterprise risk management to improve the identification and mitigation of fiscal and operational risk. Mr. Speaker, these reforms will strengthen transparency, internal controls, and prudent management of public resources while improving accountability and service delivery across government. Now let me turn to revenue projections for 2026-2027. Mr. Speaker, our fiscal projections reflect a careful balance between ambition and realism, ensuring that we live within our means while investing in our future. Based on the outlined policy measures, total revenue collection, including appropriation in aid, for the financial year 2026-27 is projected to be 3,630.5 billion, which is equivalent to 17.4% of our GDP. Of this, ordinary revenue is projected at 2,985.7 billion, equivalent to 14.3% of the gross domestic product. And ministerial appropriation in aid is projected at 644.8 billion, equivalent to 3.1% of GDP. Grants are projected at 43.6 billion or 0.2% of GDP. Expenditure projections. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure in the financial year 2026-27 budget is projected at 4,820.4 billion, equivalent to 23.2% of GDP. And of this, recurrent expenditure will amount to 3,568.4 billion, which is equivalent to 17.1% of GDP, and development expenditure, including allocations to domestic and foreign finance projects, contingency fund, and equalization fund, will amount to 750 billion shillings, which is equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Total allocation to county governments is projected at 502 billion shillings, of which 428 billion is equitable share, and 74 billion is additional allocations from the national government's share of revenue, and loans and grants from development partners. So 16.6 billion national government, and loans and grants 57.4 billion. Financing deficit, fiscal deficit and financing. Mr. Speaker, the resultant fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected at 1,146.2 billion, equivalent to 5.5% of GDP. The fiscal deficit will be financed by net external borrowing of 116.2 billion, equivalent to 0.6% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 1,030 billion, which is equivalent to 4.9% of GDP. Public debt management. That leads us to discussion on public debt management. Mr. Speaker, debt is a tool for development, but only when managed prudently and sustainably. To preserve debt sustainability and strengthen economic resilience, the government will continue implementing fiscal consolidation measures anchored on enhanced domestic revenue mobilization, strict expenditure controls, and improved efficiency in public spending. Given these reforms, the present value of public debt to GDP is projected to decline steadily towards the approved debt anchor over the medium term. Mr. Speaker, in pursuit of the strategic objective of strengthening debt portfolio diversification, the National Treasury is actively advancing a range of innovative financing instruments. These initiatives are designed to broaden the investor base, optimize the cost risk profile of public debt, and enhance overall resilience in debt management. In this regard, the government is considering thematic and liability management instruments such as debt for food swaps and debt for development swaps. These instruments provide an opportunity to convert external debt obligations into targeted investments that directly support national priorities, including food security, sustainable development, and social infrastructure, while simultaneously easing debt service pressures and reinforcing fiscal sustainability. Mr. Speaker, Further to this, the government is also evaluating opportunities to access new and diversified international capital markets. This includes the potential issuance of samurai bonds in the Japanese market, and a lot of progress has been made in this area, and panda bonds in the Chinese domestic market. By tapping into these markets, the government stands to benefit from deep and diversified pools of capital, secure potentially competitive financing terms, and promote currency diversification within the debt portfolio, thereby reducing reliance on traditional funding sources. Mr. Speaker, complementing these efforts and in recognition of the growing global demand for ethical and faith-based financing, the government is considering the introduction of sukuk instruments. These Sharia-compliant securities, which are structured on asset-backed or asset-based principles, will enable the government to access liquidity from Islamic finance markets. This will not only expand the investor base to include investors with Sharia compliance mandates, but also promote financial inclusion and contribute to the deepening of domestic and international capital markets. Collectively, these initiatives underscore a forward-looking and proactive approach to public debt management, one that emphasizes innovation, prudent risk management, and alignment with both domestic development priorities and evolving global financing trends. Mr. Speaker, to further strengthen transparency, coordination, and efficiency in the implementation of externally funded projects, the National Treasury has spearheaded the development of the Development Project Management Information System. This innovative digital platform will serve as a centralized repository for real-time tracking of project implementation, monitoring of disbursement, and alignment of outcomes with national development priorities. By enhancing project oversight and accountability, this system represents a significant step towards ensuring that externally mobilized resources are utilized effectively and that every shilling delivers value for money and tangible impact for our citizens. Let me now talk about public-private partnership framework. Mr. Speaker, the scale of Kenya's development ambitions demands that we leverage not only public resources but also the capital, innovation, and expertise of the private sector. Public-private partnerships have therefore become a central pillar of our development financing strategy. Beyond mobilizing additional resources, public-private partnerships enable the government to harness private sector innovation, technical expertise, operational efficiency, and risk-sharing arrangements that enhance project delivery while preserving fiscal sustainability. Mr. Speaker, the government continues to strengthen the public-private partnerships program as a key instrument for delivering strategic investments under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. And in this financial year, we have so far mobilized approximately 96 billion private capital investment in PPPs. This being the CRBC/NSSF investment for the Rironi Gilgil, which is A8, and Nairobi Mai Naivasha A8 South, sections of the Nairobi Nakuru Mau Summit Highway. Building on this momentum, the government targets to mobilize at least 70 billion through PPP investments in the financial year 26-27 across the energy, transport, water, housing, health, and digital infrastructure sectors. Mr. Speaker, other priority projects besides the Nairobi Nakuru Mau Summit project include the Nairobi Mombasa Expressway and the Mau Summit Eldoret Malaba Highway, which will strengthen regional connectivity and facilitate trade along the northern corridor. Mr. Speaker, in ports and logistics, the government is leveraging private sector capital and expertise for the development of container terminals, cargo berths, inland container depots, and special economic zones in Mombasa, Lamu, Nairobi, and Naivasha, strengthening Kenya's position as the region's leading trade and logistics hub. Mr. Speaker, in the energy sector, priority investment include the High Grand Falls hydropower project, expected to generate 700 megawatts, and the Karura hydropower project, expected to generate an additional 90 megawatts. Together, these projects will add approximately 790 megawatts of clean and reliable power to support industrialization, digital transformation, and emerging technologies. These investments will be complemented by strategic transmission infrastructure projects to strengthen and expand the national grid. Mr. Speaker, in the water sector, the government is advancing key dam projects, including Radat Dam, Barsalinga Dam, Lowat Dam, and Soin Koru Dam, which will enhance water security, irrigation, food production, and climate resilience in some of the country's most water-stressed regions. Mr. Speaker, in the ICT sector, the Kenya National Data Center, PPP, and the Konza Data Center project will strengthen Kenya's digital infrastructure, support data sovereignty, and position the country as a leading digital and innovation hub in the East African region. Mr. Speaker, together these projects represent investment valued at over $10 billion and will support economic growth, improve service delivery, create jobs, and strengthen Kenya's productive capacity. Mr. Speaker, to accelerate project origination and preparation, the National Treasury has established a framework for rapid results initiative, bringing together ministries, departments, and agencies to identify, develop, and fast-track investment opportunities in priority beta sectors. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury is also at the tail end of finalizing all the required PPP regulations and guidelines to fully operationalize the PPP Act. This is in addition to the recently issued circular on mandatory disclosure requirements for all privately initiated proposals. These circulars aim to enhance uniformity, transparency, accountability, and build public trust by enabling timely disclosures, integrity, and standard reporting. Mr. Speaker, as we expand the PPP program, we remain committed to increasing the participation of Kenyan enterprises, investors, and financial institutions to promote local ownership, domestic value creation, and reduce foreign exchange risk. In this regard, the National Infrastructure Fund will play a key role in mobilizing long-term domestic capital and supporting local participation in infrastructure financing. Mr. Speaker, our pension funds, insurance companies, SACCOs, and retail investors will increasingly have opportunity to participate in strategic national investments, ensuring that the benefits and returns generated by these projects accrue to Kenyan citizens while supporting long-term economic transformation. And Mr. Speaker, by mobilizing domestic savings and channeling them into productive investment, we are creating a model of growth that is owned, financed, and sustained by Kenyans. Kenya is not just open for business. Kenya is investing in itself. Now let me turn to resource allocations. Mr. Speaker, over the past 3 years, we have laid a firm foundation for inclusive growth. For financial year 2026-2027, the financial year 2026-2027 builds on those gains and advances the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. The administration's core economic strategy aligned with the fourth medium-term plan of Vision 2030. Better focuses public resources on unlocking productivity and increasing incomes at the base of the economy through deliberate, value chain-driven allocations. And with limited fiscal space, this budget prioritizes interventions that deliver the greatest impact in job creation, higher household incomes, and broader economic participation. Agricultural transformation and inclusive growth as the first pillar. Mr. Speaker, agriculture remains central to better and Kenya's long-term prosperity. It supports more than 2/3 of Kenyan households and generates significant employment multiplier effects, especially among groups historically excluded from modern economic opportunities. Strengthening agriculture is therefore essential food and nutrition security, enhancing resilience, and promoting a shared prosperity. Mr. Speaker, to accelerate agriculture transformation, I propose, and bearing in mind that agriculture is largely devolved, but I propose a targeted allocation of 64 billion across priority programs that boost productivity, value addition, and resilience. Key investments include 18 billion for fertilizer subsidy program, 2 billion for seed subsidy program, 1 billion for coffee seedlings program to lower input costs for smallholders, 4.7 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project to advance processing and market linkages. Further, I propose 5.4 billion for the Food System Resilience Project and 1.6 billion for the Resilience for Food and Nutrition Security Program to enhance adaptive livelihoods, diversify income sources, and reduce vulnerability to climate shocks. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the economic potential of pastoral and livestock systems, I propose 3.3 billion for de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement of pastoral economies program, 1.3 billion for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program, and 400 million for the Livestock Value Chain Support Project. These allocations will foster greater market access, commercialization, animal health services, and resilience among pastoral communities. Mr. Speaker, the blue economy offers meaningful opportunity for coastal and lakeside communities. To support the growth of the blue economy, I propose 8.2 billion for the blue economy and fisheries subsector, which includes 2.1 billion for aquaculture business development project, 1.8 billion for the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Socio-Economic Development Project, and 578 million for Kabonyo Fisheries and Aquaculture Training Center. These investments will expand sustainable aquaculture, uplift fisher folks' incomes, and create jobs in value addition and logistics. Mr. Speaker, addressing historical land inequalities remains a priority for this government. To promote equitable access and ensure sustainable land management, I am proposing 9.4 billion for settlement of the landless. Of this amount, 5 billion is for the landless in the coast region. 892 million for the processing and registration of title deeds, and 388 million will go towards digitization of land registries to secure tenure, reduce disputes, and unlock productive land use. Now let me turn to the second pillar, that is transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprises economy. Mr. Speaker, MSMEs are the backbone of our economy. They account for 98% of businesses, provide approximately 14.9 million jobs, and contribute about 40% to our GDP. They span informal home-based enterprises, artisans, mechanics, tailors, carpenters, fabricators, and medium-sized firms. Nurturing this sector is essential for broad-based job creation and inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, lack of affordable credit remains a major constraint for MSMEs and households at the bottom of the pyramid. To address this, I propose 550 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship Project to strengthen incubation, skills, and business development services, and 1.1 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility to expand credit access and financial services to underserved communities. Housing and settlement as the third pillar. Mr. Speaker, decent housing underpins social stability and economic productivity. Our affordable housing program not only provides safe and affordable homes to Kenyans, but also generates jobs directly in construction and indirectly across building materials and services sector. To sustain this momentum, I propose 143.7 billion for the housing sector, urban development, and public works subsectors. This package will include 18.6 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, 50.6 billion for construction of affordable housing units, 20.9 billion for social housing units, and 20.2 billion for the institutional housing, and 18.2 billion for critical social and physical infrastructure. Further, support will include 2.7 billion for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, and 535 million targeted to support construction of county headquarters. These investments will improve living conditions, provision of services, and local governance capacity. Mr. Speaker, to protect livelihoods or lives and property through compliance with building codes and standards, I propose 2.4 billion for the regulation and development of the construction industry, thus reinforcing safety, quality, and accountability across the sector. Allow me now to turn to the other pillar, that is universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, universal health coverage, UHC, is central to Beta's social contract. Equitable access to quality health services is essential for human capital, productivity, and poverty reduction. Towards this end, I have proposed 177.2 billion to the health sector to advance UHC and strengthen essential services. Key allocations include 8.6 billion salaries for UHC staff, 19.1 billion for primary healthcare fund to finance frontline services. Mr. Speaker, to reduce the burden of communicable diseases and advance immunization, I am proposing 18.5 billion for the Global Fund and 6.4 billion for vaccines and immunization program. This investment will protect children and communities and reduce health-related economic shocks. Mr. Speaker, tackling cancer and other chronic illnesses requires focused investment. I propose 3 billion to the Emergencies, Chronic and Critical Illness Fund, 1 billion for construction of a cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, 300 million to strengthen cancer management in Kenyatta National Hospital, and 150 million for the expansion of Comprehensive Cancer Center at Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hospital. These measures will expand diagnostic and treatment capacity across the region, given that we are leading as a leading hub in terms of health in this region. Mr. Speaker, to improve tertiary health care, I propose 45.3 billion for our referral hospitals. Additional targeted investments will include the following: 470 million for the construction of Kenyatta National Hospital Burns and Pediatric Center, 300 million for innovations and replacement of obsolete equipment at Kenyatta National Hospital, and 2 billion for construction of a new 2,000-bed multi-speciality at Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital to expand capacity and improve health outcomes. Mr. Speaker, to ensure reliable supply chains and strengthen human resources, I am proposing 20.9 billion for Kenya Medical Supplies Agency, KEMSA, 3.1 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, 1.3 billion for the Integrated Reproductive Health Program, 500 million for family planning and reproductive health commodities, and 600 million for equipment at the National Blood Transfusion Services. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we value the services offered by our health workers. To build workforce capacity, I propose 9.3 billion for medical interns, 10.9 billion for the Kenya Medical Training College, and 3.2 billion and 396 million for stipend and medical insurance for community health promoters, respectively. Under digital superhighway and creative economy, Mr. Speaker, digital transformation is a strategic enabler for competitiveness in the fourth industrial revolution. Digital connectivity and literacy are essential for education, healthcare, finance, markets, public services, and emerging digital opportunities. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's creative economy, encompassing film, music, fashion, arts, media, digital content, and design, has become a powerful engine for growth and youth empowerment. Investing in creative industries expands cultural exports and drives innovation. Mr. Speaker, to accelerate digital adoption and inclusion, I propose 8.6 billion Kenya shillings to this sector. And this will include 4.3 billion for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, 1.3 billion for maintenance and rehabilitation of national optic fiber backbone infrastructure, 528 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of last mile county connectivity, 309 million for government shared services, 382 million for the digital superhighway cybersecurity, 400 million for establishment of digital hubs, and 455 million for ICT infrastructure maintenance. Now let me move to infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure is the backbone of economic transformation. It provides connectivity, energy, and water resources needed to power productive activities and sustain human settlement. By reducing transaction costs and opening markets, infrastructure investments deliver long-term value. Towards this end, I propose 220.4 billion for development of roads, including 44.3 billion to support construction of roads and bridges, 58 billion for rehabilitation of roads, and 118.1 billion for road maintenance. This balanced mix supports connectivity, freight, efficiency, and long-term road preservation. Mr. Speaker, to expand railway transport, I propose 38.4 billion for railway projects. Additionally, Kenya shillings 400 million is proposed for the Kenya ferry ramp in Likoni, Mombasa. Additional 1 billion for development of public ferry landing ramps in Lake Victoria, including Bita and Sena Islands in Suba North, and West sub-counties of Homa Bay County, respectively. 150 million for acquisition of public ferry in Lake Victoria, completing the purchase of public ferry for use in Lake Victoria. And 582 million for Nairobi Bus Rapid Transport Project, which is a critical public transport investment that will reduce congestion and enhance mobility. Mr. Speaker, reliable, affordable energy is vital for industry and households. I propose 30.9 billion to the energy subsector, including 7.5 billion for the national grid system, 20.2 billion for rural electrification, and 3.2 billion for alternative energy technologies. These allocations expand access, lower costs, and promote sustainable growth. But I wish to add that a lot of energy projects will be financed through National Infrastructure Fund because they are commercially viable. And I want to turn to education. Education. Yes, I'm turning now to education. Improving education outcomes. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's future depends on developing strong human capital. And to this end, we will continue to strengthen quality learning, training and research, promote equity and inclusivity, scale up investment in education, fortify the system against emerging technological and labor market shifts, as well as fortify education to industry linkages, thus ensuring skills match demand. Mr. Speaker, I propose 784.5 billion for the education sector. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about defunding education. But in 2026-27, we are proposing 784.5 billion shillings, which is 26.4% of the ministerial budgets. Compare that to 2021-2022 budget, before this administration came into office. The budget for education was 526 billion shillings. That has increased now by 49%. And it was 24.5% of the ministerial budget. Now it is 26.5% of the ministerial budget. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is not correct that this government, this administration is defunding education. In fact, we are funding it more. So this 784.5 billion includes Kenya shillings 424 billion to Teacher Service Commission for payment of our teachers. And that has moved from 290 billion in 2022 to now 421 billion shillings. Basic education is now 136. I'm proposing 136.6 billion. Compare that to 107 billion in 2022. 163.9 billion for higher education, which was 105 billion in 2022. 1.3 billion for science, innovation and research, and 58.5 billion for technical, vocational education and training. This comprehensive allocation safeguards service delivery and expands opportunities across the learning continent. Mr. Speaker, within this funding to the education sector, I propose 7 billion for free primary education, 54.6 billion for free day secondary education, and 30.7 billion for junior secondary school capitation. Those two lines, the free day secondary education 54.6 plus junior secondary education of 30.7 adds to a total of 85.3 billion. What was it in 2022? In 2022, it was 62.4 billion shillings. I also propose 9.9 billion for administering national exams, and that is in addition to what we have just provided before the end of this year to pay the arrears of 1.5 billion to teachers. So teachers who marked exams, they will be paid before the end of this financial year, 1.5 billion. 3 billion for school feeding program. Again, this school feeding program in 2022 had 2.2 billion. Now it is 3 billion. Mr. Speaker, I am proposing 4.9 billion to be provided for conversion of 20,000 intern teachers into permanent and pensionable from January 2027. Further, the newly recruited 24,000 intern teachers will be converted into permanent and pensionable terms in July 2027. In this respect, I am proposing an allocation of 8.2 billion for intern teachers to address staffing gaps and improving learning outcomes. Mr. Speaker, this government, by the time we reach next year, we will have employed 116,000. If you put it in terms of averages, over 20,000 teachers per year. There is no any other government that has ever employed more than 10,000 teachers per year. This government is employing on average 20,000 teachers per year. Mr. Speaker, to improve learning environment and skills training, I am proposing 4.1 billion for primary and secondary school infrastructure and 2.1 billion for construction and equipping of TVET centers, 7.1 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity and Learning Program, and 4.7 billion for Kenya Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, further investments in this sector include the following: 56.3 billion for Higher Education Loans Board for provisional loans to university and TVET students. And how much was it in 2022? 15.39. It has moved from 15.39 to 56.3 billion in this financial year. There is additional 30.9 billion for university scholarships. There is also 9.2 billion dedicated specifically for TVET scholarships and 6.7 billion for CBA arrears for universities and 2021-2022 CBA. And another 5.9 billion for ongoing projects in universities across the country, measures that expand access and strengthen human capital for a competitive economy. Mr. Speaker, let me talk now or speak to supporting manufacturing for job creation. Mr. Speaker, manufacturing is a linchpin for structural transformation. We will therefore continue to strengthen local value chains, deepen backward and forward linkages, and enhance competitiveness in domestic and export markets. Mr. Speaker, to continue promoting local industries, I propose 16.7 billion to support manufacturing initiatives across implementing agencies. This includes 2.6 billion for equipping county integrated agro-industrial parks, the ones that have been completed. 5.4 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery projects. 602 million for development of a River Textile Hub. 300 million for establishment of flagship export processing zone SAP, and 604 million for the development of special economic zone textile park in Naivasha, and 2.4 billion for Kenya jobs and economic transformation. These measures will deepen industrial clustering and create high quality jobs. Mr. Speaker, I further propose 500 million for Coffee Cherry Revolving Fund, 2 billion for coffee debt waivers, and 2.7 billion for sugar sector reforms in order to stabilize key agricultural industrial value chains and protect livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, to prepare our youth for industry needs, I propose Kenya shillings 500 million for construction of industrial research laboratories that will foster innovation, internship, and industry academia collaboration. Now, improving security, which is of concern to all of us. Mr. Speaker, a safe and stable environment is indispensable for investment, trade, and economic growth. I therefore propose 252.1 billion for defense, 144.7 billion for the National Police Service, 64 billion for the National Intelligence Service, 63.9 billion for internal security and the national administration, and 42.6 billion for prison services. And these allocations strengthen national security and uphold the rule of law. Specific security interventions or investments include 13 billion to cater for leasing of police motor vehicles, 7 billion for police modernization program, 1 billion for construction and modernization of national forensic facilities. I have also proposed 3.9 billion for stipend to village elders for the first time, something that has been talked about for years, to enhance local administrative capacities, to appreciate. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, let me repeat. I have also proposed 3.9 billion for stipend to village elders to enhance local administrative capacities and to appreciate and recognize the role played by village elders in helping address security and other societal challenges. Mr. Speaker, allow me now to turn to protecting the vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, social safety nets remain central to BETA's objective of poverty reduction and inclusive growth. Strengthen safety nets, protect livelihoods, create pathways out of poverty, and enable economically excluded households to participate in productive activities. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this regard, I propose 41.8 billion to protect the vulnerable Kenyans, including 24.6 billion for cash transfers to the elderly persons, 8.9 billion for cash transfers to orphans and vulnerable children, and 1.5 billion for cash transfers to persons living with severe disabilities. These measures provide immediate relief and sustain basic consumption. And Mr. Speaker, the allocation also includes 4.3 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net Program, 550 million for the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya, 1.1 billion for the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, and 200 million to support autism and albinism programs in order to strengthen social protection and community support systems. Under equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, anchored on the Kenya Young People's Agenda, we are funding key government interventions that will equip young youth with entrepreneurial and life skills, promote local and international employment, and unlock opportunities for youth-owned MSMEs. Mr. Speaker, the government will also fund initiatives that advance gender equality by promoting meaningful inclusion of women in decision-making, enhancing their economic empowerment, and in intensifying efforts to eliminate gender-based violence and harmful practices such as female genital mutilation. Mr. Speaker, to empower youth, women and constituencies across the country, I propose 110.2 billion for targeted initiatives. This includes 12.5 billion for the National Youth Service, 4.9 billion to National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement, that is NYOTA project, 1.6 billion for Youth Employment Support Program, and 1 billion for film development services. These investments will spur skills development, civic engagement, and growth in creative industry. Mr. Speaker, to support women and girls, I propose 402 million for the Women Enterprise Fund and 4.9 billion for the National Government Affirmative Action Fund to enhance their inclusion, dignity, and economic participation. Mr. Speaker, to promote regional equity and strengthen local development, I propose 61.8 billion for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, 10.3 billion for the Equalization Fund to finance programs in marginalized areas, and 10.5 billion for the Kenya Devolution Support Program number 2. In stimulating tourism growth, sports, culture, recreation, and arts. Mr. Speaker, sports and arts are vital for national identity, youth empowerment, and economic diversification. We will therefore promote sports at all levels, enforce international anti-doping standards, and commercial and indigenous knowledge to create livelihood opportunities. To harness national talent and promote Kenya as a regional cultural hub, I propose 45.6 billion for sports, culture, recreation, and tourism, including 25.2 billion for sports, arts and social development fund, 14.3 billion for the tourism fund, and these allocations will stimulate jobs, community development, and foreign exchange earnings. Under environment protection or environmental protection, water and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, environmental conservation, climate resilience, forest reforestation, biodiversity protection, and land restoration are central to sustainable development. Access to clean water, improved sanitation, and expanded irrigation are equally crucial for health, productivity, and agricultural growth. Towards this end, I propose an allocation of 124.8 billion for the cluster. And Mr. Speaker, to safeguard ecosystem and tackle climate risk, I propose 13.4 billion for forest resources conservation and management, 1.7 billion for forest research and development. I also propose 3.2 billion for tree growing campaign. Mr. Speaker, I further propose 4.7 billion for environment management and protection, 8.9 billion for the Kenya Financing Locally Led Climate Action Project, FLOCA, and 1.8 billion for meteorological service. Mr. Speaker, in order to support solid waste management in Nairobi, I propose 2.5 billion and 1 billion for the removal of asbestos as well. Additional targeted allocations in this sector include 13 billion for wildlife security, conservation and management, 1.2 for wildlife research and development, 1.1 billion for human-wildlife conflict compensation, 800 million for wildlife insurance. And these investments protect natural capital that underpins tourism and rural livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, to expand water infrastructure and ensure water security, I propose 51.5 billion for water and sewerage infrastructure development, 6.3 billion for water resource management, 2.5 billion for water storage and flood control. Mr. Speaker, to promote irrigation development in the country and reduce reliance on rain-fed agriculture, I propose 1.1 billion for irrigation and drainage development, 1.8 billion for large-scale commercial irrigation development, 3.3 billion for community-managed irrigation development, 3 billion for public irrigation schemes, 1.6 billion for revitalization of irrigation in asal areas, and these allocations will improve access, productivity, and resilience in agriculture and settlement. Now, improving governance and sustaining the fight against corruption. Mr. Speaker, strong institutions and adherence to the rule of law are prerequisites for sustainable development. Effective governance strengthens investor confidence and ensures efficient delivery of public services. To strengthen accountability and the rule of law, I propose 5.1 billion for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 7 billion for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, 6 billion to the State Law Office, 9.8 billion for the Office of the Auditor General, and these allocations will intensify anti-corruption efforts and reinforce public sector integrity. Mr. Speaker, to enhance parliamentary oversight and legislative functions, I propose 50.9 billion for Parliament. Further, to support administration of justice, I propose 30.4 billion for the judiciary. These allocations are essential to uphold democracy, transparency, and citizen trust in public institutions. Now, allocations to county governments. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed in supporting devolution through intergovernmental fiscal transfers in line with Article 202 of the Constitution. I therefore propose to allocate 428 billion in equitable share, which shall be transferred to the respective county governments as per the first basis formula during the financial year 26-27. The 428 billion represents 21% of the most recently audited revenues for the financial year 22-23, way higher than the minimum of 15% prescribed in Article 203(2) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, including the additional allocation from the national government share of revenue of 16.6 billion to the proposed shareable of 428 billion, implies that the county government will receive a total of Kenya shillings 444.6 billion, just a few billions, less than about 5 billion less than what is in the 10-point agenda. Further to this allocation, I have proposed an additional allocation of 57.4 billion from loans and grants from development partners. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury has developed the Draft Public Finance Management Bill 2025, which proposes to amend Sections 42 and 191 of the Public Finance Management Act, CAP 412. These amendments aim to provide for submission of two separate bills, one on the county government's additional allocations, national government share of revenue bill, and the other on proceeds from loans and grants from development partners bill. This will mitigate delays in the approval and disbursement of county government's additional allocations. Now let me speak or talk about equalization fund. Mr. Speaker, to support implementation of projects in the marginalized areas, 10.3 billion has been proposed as an allocation to the equalization fund in the financial year 26-27. Mr. Speaker, now I turn to county government's pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the growing stock of pending bills in county government poses a fiscal risk. As of 30th June 2025, county governments reported outstanding pending bills of 183 billion. And Mr. Speaker, during its 27th ordinary session, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, IBEC, approved and adopted the county government's pending bills action plan submitted by the Controller Budget. The Council directed all county governments to customize and implement their respective pending bills action plans to progressively reduce the stock of pending bills. I urge county governments to ensure full implementation of the agreed action plans. Now let me turn to taxation measures. Having talked about expenditure, the money being allocated here and there, now it is the time to see where money is coming from. Taxation measures. Mr. Speaker, following the tragic events of 25th June of 2024, which I hope will never be repeated again in this country, a day that remains etched in our hearts, government was reminded of the need to always listen to the voices of our citizens. As I mentioned at the beginning of this statement, I championed public engagements with Kenyans of all walks of life while putting together this budget and the supporting policy measures. Mr. Speaker, over the last 1 month, focus has been more on the Finance Bill 2026. And like I mentioned, I engaged Kenyans widely in town hall meetings, various media stations, Bunge la Mwananchi at Jivanji Gardens here in Nairobi, Ongata Rongai in Kajiado, comrades at the University of Nairobi, Citizen Digital Express, just to mention but a few. I wish to thank all Kenyans who took time to attend these forums and engage with me. My assurance is that their voices have been reflected in the proposals that I'm presenting today. Mr. Speaker, in preparing these proposals, I have been guided by the overriding principle of placing the well-being of the common Mwananchi first. In this regard, I have deliberately chosen not to introduce new taxes or increase tax rates that would further overburden the hardworking Kenyans and their families. Instead, the measures are focused on reforms that improve efficiency in tax collection, create a fairness in the tax system, and broaden the revenue base without burdening the Mwananchi. Mr. Speaker, allow me to share a striking reality. Today, only 3.1 million working Kenyans contribute to pay as you earn. Yet, millions of other Kenyans that make money in our economy do not contribute to the taxes we collect. Many of these people have been filing nil returns year after year. The burden of developing this country has therefore been on a few of us. And Mr. Speaker, that this must change. We shall continue to broaden our tax base, a process that will help us lower tax rates to ease burden on the few that are tax compliant. Mr. Speaker, to support financing of the 2026-27 budget, I will today present highlights of two sets of proposals. The first set of proposals relates to custom measures agreed upon by the East African Community Ministers, Cabinet Secretaries responsible for finance and economic affairs during this year's pre-budget consultations held in Arusha, Tanzania on 15th May 2026, and which we will conclude this coming weekend. The measures agreed upon target to support local manufacturing, promote value addition, strengthen industrial competitiveness, enhance food security, protect jobs, and align the regional tariff structure with Kenya's economic development projects. The second set of proposals are contained in the Finance Bill of 2026. These measures are guided by three key principles. First, efficiency, to ensure tax collection is done with minimal leakages and ease compliance. Second, fairness, to ensure that the tax burden is shared equitably among all. And third, simplicity to ensure that compliance with tax laws is straightforward, transparent, and predictable for all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the measures I present today, majority of which are targeted to simplify tax compliance and strengthen tax administration, are expected to yield an additional Kenya shillings 98.9 billion in terms of revenues. So let me turn to custom measures. Mr. Speaker, allow me to express my sincere appreciation to this House for the approval granted to the custom measures on 8th of May 2026, which are subsequently presented during the pre-budget consultations held in Arusha, Tanzania on 15th May of 2026. I wish to inform this House that all those measures were subsequently adopted by the East African Community Ministers / Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance and economic affairs. These measures will take effect from 1st July 2026. I will now highlight some of them. Mr. Speaker, high production costs continue to constrain growth and competitiveness of local industries, particularly where manufacturers rely on imported inputs that are not available locally. To lower the cost of production for our local industries and make locally produced goods affordable, Kenya secured an approval at the region to continue applying a 0% duty remission on selected inputs used in manufacture of pharmaceutical products, roofing materials, automotive parts for vehicles and motorcycles, and cold rooms for preservation, leather processing, and the assembly of smart mobile phones. Laptops and tablets. Kenya also secured approval to continue applying a duty remission rate of only 10% on selected inputs used in furniture and door manufacturing, as well as completely knocked down kits for assembly of motorcycles. Through these measures, jobs created by the industries in these categories remain protected to support livelihood of our people. Mr. Speaker, food security is one of the pillars under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and therefore remains a national priority. To support affordability of food and animal feeds by Kenyans, Kenya was allowed to continue importing wheat at a duty remission rate of 10% instead of the common external tariff rate of 35%. Continue importing imports for manufacture of animal feeds. I want to repeat. Continue importing inputs for manufacture of animal feeds duty-free under the East African Community Duty Remission Scheme and apply a 0% import duty on dates consumed by our Muslim brothers and sisters during the period of Ramadan in 2027. Kenya also secured approval to continue applying an import duty of 35% or $200 per metric ton, whichever is higher, on imported rice instead of the common external tariff rate of 75% or $345 per metric ton. Mr. Speaker, to promote value additional products locally grown by our farmers, Kenya was allowed a stay of application of East African Community common external tariff rates and apply a duty rate of 35% or equivalent specific duty rates on selected processed food products, including preserved vegetables, peas, sweet corn, tomato products, sauces, jams, edible oils, malt extract, and other prepared food products. This will cushion the local industries from imported products and make Kenyan products more competitive in the domestic market. Protect these agro-based industries, thus safeguarding income of our farmers and the local jobs created in the agro-processing value chain. Mr. Speaker, to protect local manufacturers in the textile, apparel, leather, and footwear sectors, and the many jobs in these industries, Kenya was granted an extension of a stay of application of EAC common standard tariff and apply higher duty rates ranging between 25% and 35% on imported textiles, apparel, blankets, bed linen, carpets, tarpaulins, leather products, and worn clothing, while maintaining 0% duty remission on selected inputs for leather processing. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen digital connectivity and part of the digital superhighway pillar of BETTER, the local assembly of smart devices remains a key priority. Expanding access to affordable smart telecommunication devices will enable more Kenyans participate in the digital economy and benefit from emerging opportunities in business and innovation. With this in mind, Kenya requested and was granted a 0% duty remission on inputs used in the assembly of smartphones, laptops, and tablets. Additionally, optical fiber cables and recorded software products will be imported at a higher tariff rate of 10% instead of the EAC common external tariff rate of 0%. Mr. Speaker, to lower the cost of construction materials for the delivery of affordable housing as part of better priorities, Kenya was allowed to continue applying 0% duty remission on selected inputs for the manufacture of roofing materials and related industrial products. Further, to protect local industries that manufacture steel products, aluminum products, pipes, electrical equipment, ceramic tiles, and other construction materials, Kenya was also allowed to continue applying stays of application at duty rates ranging from 25% to 35%, together with equivalent specific duty rates where applicable, to discourage under declaration of import values. Mr. Speaker, given the limited fiscal space, Kenya continues to explore alternative financing models, particularly the public-private partnership arrangements in developing infrastructure projects. With this in mind, Kenya was granted a stay of application of the common tariff and apply a 0% import duty on goods, materials, and equipment imported for use in the PPP projects. Mr. Speaker, local assembly of motor vehicles and the manufacturing of automotive parts continue to create jobs for Kenyans. In this respect, Kenya applied to protect these industries and the associated value chain. Kenya was granted a 0% duty remission on selected inputs used in the manufacture of automotive parts. Mr. Speaker, to support local manufacturing of paper and paper products, Kenya was allowed to continue applying stays of application at a rate of 35% on craft paper and paperboard, printed polybags, sacks and bags, and related packaging materials instead of the common tariff rates of 25%. Mr. Speaker, to protect local manufacturers of household and industrial products and the jobs therein, Kenya will continue to the stays of application under the common tariff rates and apply rates ranging from 25 to 35%, together with equivalent specific duty rates where applicable on products including LPG stoves, cookware, aluminum products, steel products, electrical equipment, and related manufactured goods. Now let me turn to the highlights of proposals in the Finance Bill. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the proposals in the Finance Bill 2026 that target to amend various domestic tax laws to improve revenue collection, ease tax compliance, and create fairness within the tax system. Under income tax, Mr. Speaker, currently certain corporate restructurings, such as mergers, amalgamations, or internal reorganizations are exempt from capital gains tax. To encourage the establishment and growth of real estate investment trusts, the bill is proposing to extend the exemption to qualifying property transfers into approved real estate investment trusts to avoid selective treatment or application. Mr. Speaker, to promote fairness, improve consistency within the tax system, and support investment in the petroleum sector, the bill is proposing to reduce the corporate tax rate applicable to non-resident petroleum contractors to 30% from 37.5%. This will harmonize with the rate that is applicable to other non-resident companies. The bill further clarifies that repatriated income earned by non-resident petroleum contractors will be subject to tax at the rate of 15%, consistent with the treatment applicable to other non-resident persons operating in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the current framework for taxation of trusts is complex and may create uncertainty in the taxation of trust incomes and distribution. To improve clarity and align the framework with the international best practices, the bill is proposing to introduce a single point taxation system at the trustee level and removes the risk of double taxation for beneficiaries, thereby improving compliance and reducing opportunities for tax avoidance. Mr. Speaker, the bill does not propose to increase monthly income tax. I wish to state that. On the contrary, the bill is proposing a simplified tax framework for non-resident persons who earn monthly rental income in Kenya but do not pay tax on that income. In this case, therefore, non-resident landlords will be required to register and account for tax directly especially where the property is not managed through a property agent, while preserving the existing withholding tax framework where non-residents are currently complying with their tax obligation. Mr. Speaker, this proposal will not result in higher rent or additional burden on existing tenants that reside in properties owned by non-residents. Mr. Speaker, currently any persons making payments to non-resident ship owners and charterers are required to withhold and remit tax on shipping income. This has affected compliance, particularly where persons producing shipping services are not aware of the withholding obligations. To simplify the administration of the tax and provide greater certainty in its collection, the bill is proposing to place the responsibility for payment of the tax on resident shipping agents and provide a clear timeline for remittance being within 5 days after receipt of payment or before the ship leaves the port of landing, whichever is earlier. Mr. Speaker, currently the deadline for filing tax returns is 30th June of every year for all categories of income, which leaves no room for verification and validation of filed returns before the commencement of another financial year. To provide sufficient time for verification and validation of returns, I propose revisions to the timelines for filing individual income tax returns. Under the proposal, taxpayers with nil returns will be required to file within 1 month after the end of the year of income, because they have nil returns anyway. While taxpayers whose income is fully taxed at source, including persons earning employment income only, will file within 4 months after the end of the year of income. All other taxpayers are required to file their return by 30th of June every year. All businesses will still continue to file their returns by 30th of June every year. So it is not true that we are reducing for everyone, making filing returns complicated. Mr. Speaker, currently gains arising from offshore transfers where the value of the transferred shares is derived from assets located in Kenya are not taxed. To ensure that gains derived from Kenya assets remain taxable in Kenya, irrespective of how the transaction is structured, the bill therefore proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to ensure that all gains from transfer of assets located in Kenya get same tax treatment irrespective of the location of the beneficial owners. Mr. Speaker, when companies make profits, those profits should find their way back to shareholders within a reasonable time. Currently, some companies have been holding back their profits indefinitely, simply to defer paying dividend tax. This is a loophole that needs to be addressed. In order to provide greater certainty in the application of the deemed dividend provision, which is already in law, and discourage indefinite retention of profits solely for purpose of deferring dividend taxation, the bill is proposing to introduce a minimum deemed dividend distribution threshold of 60% of undistributed income. Mr. Speaker, rapid advances in technology have transformed the way businesses make payments, distribute software, and provide services across borders. However, the current Income Tax Act provisions do not clearly address the tax treatment of certain payments arising from software distribution arrangements, payment card schemes, payment processing system, and related digital platform. This has created uncertainty and disputes regarding the taxation of interchange fees, merchant service fees, and other payments made for access to this system. The bill therefore proposes amendments to clarify the definition of management of professional fees and royalties in order to provide a clear legal framework for taxation of such payments and reduce opportunities for revenue leakage. Mr. Speaker, gambling activities have grown significantly in recent years, particularly through digital platforms. While these are legitimate activities, winnings from gambling are income, and like any other income, they should be taxed. The bill therefore proposes to introduce withholding tax on winnings, lotteries, and prize competitions. Mr. Speaker, the scrap metal trade is a significant economic activity that supports the livelihood of many Kenyans. To improve traceability of transactions and strengthen compliance for scrap metal trade, the bill proposes to introduce a withholding tax on incomes earned from the sale of scrap metal at a low rate of 1.5% of the gross amount paid. Mr. Speaker, currently payments made by the national carrier to non-resident service providers are exempt from payment of withholding income tax, while similar payments when made to residents are taxed. To promote fairness and ensure consistent tax treatment between resident and non-resident service providers, the bill proposes to remove the exemption from withholding tax on payments made by the national carrier to non-resident service providers. Value-added tax, VAT. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to the proposed amendments to the value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, dialysis remains a life-sustaining treatment for many Kenyans living with kidney disease. Yet the cost of essential renal treatment equipment continues to place pressure on households and healthcare providers. The bill therefore proposes to exempt dialyzers, which is a critical life-saving component for patients experiencing kidney failure, from VAT to reduce their cost and make renal treatment affordable. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the important role that trade in used clothing and footwear, commonly known as mitumba, continues to play in supporting livelihood and affordable access to clothing across the country. To simplify compliance, the bill proposes to charge VAT at the point of importation, while subsequent domestic sales of worn clothing and worn footwear will be exempt from VAT. This means that mitumba traders selling to everyday Kenyans will not be burdened with VAT obligations. Contrary to what is being said out there, we are making mitumba more and more cheap because there will be no multiple VATs. You only pay once at the point of entry. Mr. Speaker, currently passengers arriving at the ports of entry in Kenya are allowed VAT exemption on value of goods not exceeding only $300. This threshold has remained unchanged and has not kept pace with the current realities. The bill therefore is proposing to increase the VAT exempt threshold on value goods for passengers arriving at the ports of entry from $300 to $2,000. Mr. Speaker, the scrap metal sector plays an important role in supporting local manufacturing and recycling activities, but presents significant challenges in administration of input VAT. To simplify VAT administration within the sector, while complementing the withholding income tax framework proposed under the Income Tax Act, the bill therefore proposes to exempt scrap metal from payment of VAT. Mr. Speaker, public-private partnership continues to play an important role in the delivery of strategic infrastructure projects across the country. To reduce the cost of implementation of the projects, the bill proposes a VAT exemption for goods and services imported or procured locally for use solely in the approved public-private partnership infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, the rapid growth of digital payment platforms has created uncertainty regarding the VAT treatment of certain payment facilitation and processing services. While these services support financial transactions, they are distinct from the underlying financial services. The bill therefore seeks to clarify that core financial services, including money transfer services such as M-Pesa, will remain exempt from VAT, while platforms that facilitate services such as merchant acquiring, payment gateway, aggregation, and settlement services will not qualify for exemption. Mr. Speaker, to promote consistency in the treatment of input VAT and support proper administration of the VAT framework, the bill is proposing to require adjustment of input VAT previously claimed where goods that were intended for taxable supply subsequently become exempt while still in stock. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's tax expenditure was estimated at 286 billion or 1.8% of GDP in 2024, a decline from 368 billion or 2.4% of GDP in 2023. But Mr. Speaker, to further reduce tax expenditures, I propose to rationalize some of the existing incentives, such as to remove VAT exemption on certain goods and services currently exempt, including denatured ethanol, direction finding compass, affordable housing construction inputs, tourism facility construction inputs, and aircrafts of Chapter 88, excluding parts and large aircrafts of over 2,000 kilograms. These are what we call choppers, helicopters. We are removing them from VAT exempt. But aircraft parts will still enjoy VAT exemption. To exclude from VAT exemption spare parts applicable to official aid-funded projects to reduce opportunities for misuse of the exemption. So we exempted the vehicles, but not the parts. Transfer selected supplies from zero-rated status to VAT-exempt status in line with the national tax policy objective of limiting zero rating primarily to export. To exempt mobile phones from VAT as part of the simplified taxation framework for mobile phones outlined under the proposal under Excise Duty Act. So when we talk of excise duty on phones, moving from 10% to 25%, they talk about that, but they fail to say that we are removing VAT on mobile phones from 16% to nothing. So the above measures are expected to further lower tax expenditures as a share of GDP, hence revenue collection. Excise Duty Act. Mr. Speaker, we now turn to the proposed amendments to the Excise Duty Act. Mr. Speaker, currently, more Kenyans are drinking bottled water in both urban and rural areas. The bill is proposing to remove excise duty of 6 shillings and 41 cents per litre of bottled water. We are removing excise duty on bottled water. Mr. Speaker, it is expected that the vendors of bottled water will pass this benefit to the ordinary citizen by lowering the price of bottled water because it has ceased to be a luxury. Mr. Speaker, mobile phones have become essential tools for enhancing communication, access to information, and delivery of services. They support among others, education, businesses, financial services, e-commerce, healthcare, and social interaction, while also promoting digital inclusion, productivity, and social economic development. Mr. Speaker, to further encourage use of mobile phones in the country, the bill is proposing to simplify taxation of mobile phones by replacing the existing multiple taxes and levies with a single excise duty charged at the rate of 25% at the point of activation on any telecommunications network. This measure will lower the prices of mobile phones in the country. I heard another leader saying 25%, but I'm asking, why is he complaining about 25%? Does he want us to remain at 55.5%? Because that is the rate as at today. Mr. Speaker, in recognition of health risk associated with excessive sugar consumption, the bill proposes to increase excise duty on sugar-sweetened beverages from 14 shillings per litre to 20 shillings per litre. Mr. Speaker, in support of public health, the bill also proposes to adjust excise duty rates on other manufactured tobacco and tobacco substitutes, tobacco extracts, and essences from 11,382 per kilogram, shillings per kilogram, to 12,550 per kilogram. While the excise duty rates applicable to cigars, churros, cigarillos, I don't consume this, so I have difficulty in reading, containing tobacco or tobacco substitutes, will be adjusted from 16,260 shillings per kilogram to 18,000 shillings per kilogram. I don't know whether Honorable Mboko knows about this more than I do. Mr. Speaker, betting or horse trading is currently exempt from excise duty. In order to create fairness in the taxation of betting and gaming activities, the bill is proposing to remove this exemption. Further, to expand the scope of taxation, the bill proposes to amend the definition of gaming wallets to include land-based betting and gaming activities. Mr. Speaker, to promote fairness and consistency in the taxation of similar products, the bill is proposing to harmonize excise duty treatment within the alcoholic beverages sector by removing the preferential excise duty rate of Kenya shillings 10 per centiliter of pure alcohol for alcoholic beverages manufactured by small independent brewers. Mr. Speaker, in the Finance Act of 2025, excise duty rate for undenatured extra neutral alcohol supplied to licensed manufacturers of spirituous beverages was set at 500 shillings per litre. To support manufacturers in this sector, the bill proposes to reduce the applicable excise duty rate to 80 shillings per litre. And in addition, the bill proposes amendment to clarify that this rate is applicable to both locally purchased and imported and denatured extra-neutral alcohol supplied to licensed manufacturers. Mr. Speaker, to address environmental externalities, the bill proposes to introduce excise duty on coal at the rate of 5% of the extract value. The bill also proposes to extend excise duty on plastic articles for locally manufactured products in order to promote consistency in tax treatment. And Mr. Speaker, the bill further proposes to establish a clear excise duty taxation framework for vintage and collector vehicles. This proposal relates to vehicles whose year of first registration is at least 30 years before the date of purchase and whose value is at least 10 million shillings. Tax procedures. Mr. Speaker, I have about 30 more pages.
Nobody's complaining.
Looking at the time. Now, on Tax Procedures Act, Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendments to the Tax Procedures Act seeks to strengthen tax administration, improve compliance, support digitization, and make it easier for taxpayers to meet their obligations. Mr. Speaker, currently, foreign investors are required to obtain KRA PIN before opening Central Depository and Settlement Corporation, that is CDSC, accounts to participate in trading in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. In order to improve the attractiveness of Kenya's capital markets to foreign portfolio investors, the bill proposes to exempt foreign investors from the requirement to obtain KRA PIN solely for purposes of opening Central Depository and Settlement Corporation accounts. Mr. Speaker, income earned by non-resident investors from investment in the Nairobi Securities Exchange is subject to withholding tax as a final tax, and they are not required to file annual income tax returns. Mr. Speaker, I am grateful that this House approved the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill of 2025 that was subsequently enacted in 2025. Mr. Speaker, currently there is no reporting framework for virtual asset transactions. In order to address this gap, the bill proposes to introduce a virtual asset reporting framework for virtual asset service providers so as to improve visibility of virtual asset transactions and align Kenya's reporting framework with the international best practices. Mr. Speaker, to simplify compliance, reduce filing errors, and improve efficiency in tax administration, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to provide for pre-populated tax returns using information already available to the Kenya Revenue Authority. And under this amendment, taxpayers still retain the right to review, confirm, or amend the information before submitting their returns. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen the integrity of the tax system and prevent tax arrangements designed primarily to obtain a tax benefit while preserving fairness for compliant taxpayers, the bill is proposing introduction of a general anti-avoidance rule applicable across tax laws. Mr. Speaker, the Tax Procedures Amendments Act of 2024 provided for a tax amnesty on penalties, interest, and fines for taxpayers on tax liabilities accrued up to 31st December 2023. This facilitated taxpayers to clear principal tax liabilities to government. In order to encourage settlement of existing tax liabilities by more taxpayers, this bill is proposing a 6-month amnesty beginning 1st July 2026 for tax liabilities accrued up to 31st December 2025. Under this amnesty, taxpayers who settle the principal tax due within the amnesty period will qualify for waiver of the related penalties, interest, and fines. Mr. Speaker, to support faster resolution of system-related issues and improve taxpayer confidence in digital tax administration, the bill proposes to allow for waiver of penalties and interest by the Commissioner up to a specified threshold of 2 million arising from electronic tax system errors. Mr. Speaker, to improve continuity of tax records and simplify compliance for reinstated entities, the bill proposes to provide for automatic reinstatement of a personal identification number where the registered company or other entity is restored to the official register. Mr. Speaker, to improve efficiency in tax administration, the bill is proposing to allow tax assessments to be issued based on information lawfully available to the Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, to further line enforcement of tax compliance, the bill is proposing to amend the Tax Procedures Act to clarify that enforcement of tax collection when a tax appeals tribunal or a court judgment on a tax dispute is in favor of the commissioner shall only be suspended where a stay order has been granted. Mr. Speaker, to lower compliance costs and simplify customs clearance procedures, the bill is proposing to remove the requirement for importers to present certificates of origin where such certificates are not necessary for purposes of claiming preferential tariff treatment. Now let me turn to Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act. Mr. Speaker, under the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act, the bill proposes to rationalize the application of import declaration fee and railway development levy exemption on aircraft by limiting the exemption to aircraft parts and large aircraft used for commercial air transport. This measure is intended to better target the exemption while supporting Kenya's position as a regional hub for aircraft maintenance and aviation services. Mr. Speaker, the bill is also proposing amendments to clarify the application of customs procedures to all fees and levies imposed under the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act. These measures are intended to improve administration and support prudent fiscal management. Mr. Speaker, to support the growth of real estate investment trust market and development of Kenya's capital markets, the bill proposes to exempt from stamp duty transfers of beneficial interest in property into approved real estate investment trust. This measure complements the proposed amendments under the Income Tax Act on exemption of real estate investment trust from capital gains tax. Mr. Speaker, in line with the proposed simplified framework under the Excess Duty Act on mobile phones, the bill is proposing to exempt imported mobile phones from imported declaration fee and railway development levy, another benefit that is not being talked about by naysayers of the bill. Mr. Speaker, to increase resources available for road maintenance while ensuring that existing annuity obligations continue to be met, the bill proposes amendments to the Road Maintenance Levy Act to reduce the allocation to road annuity fund from 3 shillings per litre to 1.5 shillings per litre of fuel. And this reduction of 1 shilling and 50 cents per litre of fuel will be allocated to road maintenance levy funds. Mr. Speaker, let me now conclude. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to underscore that we have navigated a period of extraordinary challenge, yet the economy has held firm. Kenyans have demonstrated remarkable resilience and patience, and this government has remained steadfast in its commitment to deliver on the promises of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda at the most difficult period in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, this budget was carefully crafted against a backdrop of limited fiscal space and competing priorities. It reflects prudent choices and disciplined fiscal management while directing resources towards programs and interventions that will have the greatest impact on the lives of ordinary Kenyans while staying firmly on course with our fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, the reforms I have outlined today are designed to cushion our citizens, strengthen economic resilience, and lay the foundations for sustainable growth and transformation. They will stimulate job creation, ease the cost of living, and accelerate economic transformation of our people, that our people deserve. Mr. Speaker, this budget is deliberate, decisive, and targeted. It channels scarce resources to where they catalyze the greatest economic and social returns. To smallholder farmers and pastoralists, to MSMEs and youth, to health and education, to infrastructure that connects markets, and to institutions that uphold the rule of law. Every allocation is chosen to multiply employment, protect the vulnerable, advance equity, and unlock private investment. By prioritizing inclusive bottom-up growth, we will not only sustain recovery, but accelerate shared prosperity across Kenya. This is therefore a budget for Mwananchi. This is a budget for the people. I call upon honorable members and all Kenyans to stand behind its implementation as we work together with purpose and resolve towards our shared prosperity. Together, we can translate these investments into jobs, higher incomes, and a better future for every Kenyan. At this point, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and His Excellency, the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, for their unwavering support, leadership, and counsel as we prepared this budget. I am forever grateful to His Excellency the President for the support he has given me and my ministry. I am also greatly indebted to the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, my fellow Cabinet Secretaries, all the Principal Secretaries, accounting officers, and all personnel across government ministries, departments and agencies who have diligently contributed to the development of financial year 26-27 budget. Allow me to thank you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, and your counterpart in the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, and the entire House leadership, including the respective clerks, for supporting the approval process of the financial year 26-27 budget. My sincere thanks to honorable chairs and members of both the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance and National Planning Committee and all other departmental committees of this House, as well as the staff of the Parliamentary Budget Office, for their constructive inputs and leadership during the approval process of this budget. I appreciate in a special way Dr. Chris Kipto, the Principal Secretary for the National Treasury, and the staff of the National Treasury who have worked tirelessly, hard, long hours to ensure that this budget and the supporting documents are prepared and supported and submitted within the legal timelines. I also wish to appreciate my two other Principal Secretaries at the National Treasury, namely Dr. Boniface Barasa Makoha, the Principal Secretary for State Department for Economic Planning, and Mr. Cyril Wagunda Odede, the Principal Secretary for State Department of Public Investment and Assets Management, and their respective staff for the support during the preparation and finalization of the budget for financial year 26-27. My sincere appreciation also goes to the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as the management and staff of both institutions, and all MDAs for their valuable contributions to the budget process. My gratitude to our multilateral and bilateral development partners for their continued technical and financial support. I also thank the private sector for their participation and contribution in the budget process. I wish to appreciate the members of the fourth estate and all non-state actors for the active engagement and participation in the financial year 2026-27 budget process. Mr. Speaker, I cannot forget to mention this. My sincere thanks also goes particularly to my dear wife, Madam Rhoda Mbadi, and my children who have remained my pillar. In the course of the year, calls of duty would be challenging, but when I got home, I felt relaxed among them. I will forever be grateful for their support, inspiration, and prayers as I executed my duties at the National Treasury. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank Kenyans from all walks of life who gave their suggestions and proposals throughout the budget-making process. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, go on.
Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, you will recall that I have already submitted to this House the budget estimates and the Finance Bill 2026, together with the accompanying documents as required by the Public Finance Management Act, CAP 412A. Today, I further submit the following documents to this August House and request that you graciously receive them. Number 1, budget statement for financial year 26-27. Number 2, the 2026 budget policy statement. Number 3, estimates of revenue, grants and loans for the financial year 26-27. Number 4, financial statement for the financial year 26-27 budget. Number 5, medium-term debt management strategy 2026. Number 6, budget highlights, the Mwananchi guide for the financial year 2026-27 budget. And I believe we have put here also the Kiswahili version. Number 7, statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial year 26-27. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, honorable members.
You may You may take your seat, Minister. Order. Honorable members, I wish to thank the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury for ably making a public pronouncement of the budget highlights for the national government for the financial year 2026-27 and the medium term and the revenue-raising measures. In this regard, honorable members, I confirm that in conformity with the provisions of sections 39 and 39A of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and the Standing Order 244C, the Cabinet Secretary has submitted to the National Assembly the relevant legislative proposals necessary to actualize the revenue-raising measures to finance the 2026-2027 budget. This has since culminated in the Finance Bill 2026, which is under consideration by the House. Honourable members, it is now my pleasure to invite all honourable members, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, other Cabinet Secretaries, representatives of the Judiciary, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and all invited guests to a reception at the Parliament courtyard hereafter. Honourable members, the time now being 6:13, the House now stands adjourned until Tuesday, 16th June 2026 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you.
You have been watching the pronouncement of the budget highlights by the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Honorable John Mbadi. The broadcast has been brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. On behalf of the team here, led by the acting head of PBU, Stephen Nyakuti, coordinator Doris Gitonga, director Stephanie Ayeta, Brenda Mora, camera operators Nao Mora, Hamis Mambo, Efela Gare, Calvin Muthe, sound